In the peaceful village of Trem, mountains rise all around and fields stretch out in every direction. People smile and say hello to each other. Cows munch on grass in the fields, while a woman washes clothes by the riverside. Nearby, a rooster struts around, adding life to the scene. The boy chops the ground with his hoe, making dirt scatter everywhere. Nearby, a man pushes a cart full of stones, and another man uses a big wooden beam to try and pry a stump from the earth. The boy keeps working, and in the background, a man drags a heavy log. The boy's name is Luca, and he is 10 years old. He explains that every day is the same for him, and he keeps working with his hoe as he talks. But if they had a tractor, the boy could use it and make everything so much easier. After all, he's actually someone from another world, starting life over here. Even though he was reborn, he can't clearly remember his previous life. He just knows that life used to be easy and comfortable, unlike this new world, where there aren't any machines or technology at all. The boy glances at his finger and begins to gently spin it. In this world, magic is real. The main character twirls a thin stream of water around his fingertip. He explains that this world feels just like a game he used to play before he was reborn. Suddenly, a dragon and some wizards show up in the background. Calmly, he creates a little ball of water, twists it around, and then swallows it, only letting out a deep sigh afterward. In this world, most people can use simple magic at home. With a bit of magical power, you can make things like fire or water appear. You can also control the earth and wind. The boy stands surrounded by a bright light, almost like a protective shield, and he tells us that we should keep moving forward with the same energy and determination. In this world, there's magic that can make your body stronger. The main character keeps training hard, and he's not alone. Everyone is supporting him. Nearby, a man is pushing a cart, helping out in his own way. As the sun goes down behind the mountains, the main character remembers growing up in the countryside. Life here is often tough and filled with small challenges. His grandmother is bringing the pigs home, while a woman is hanging clothes out to dry. Still, this land is calm and beautiful. The boy gazes at the wide, freshly plowed fields and the village nestled near the mountains. Luke's father calls out to him, saying it's time to come back. Luke pauses, rests the handle of his hoe on his shoulder, and turns to look at his dad. The man mentions that Luke is doing well. The main character asks what kind of worker his father was. The man answers that he feels good and doesn't want to take a break from his job. They decide to try making a magical bath at home. As they walk away from the fields, a man waves goodbye from behind. The father and son smile at one another and slowly head home together. Everyone in the village smiles and waves, holding out food for them to try. Carrying their basket, they head straight home, happy and excited. A father and his son arrive back home. A young girl happily runs up to them, calling out to her dad and brother. Their mother greets them warmly, calling them Edward and Luke. The father says with a big smile that they're finally home, and Luke echoes excitedly that he's home, too. Alice asks her brother if they'll take a bath together today. Lucas says he'll get the hot water ready. Mom wonders if Lucas is feeling tired. He replies that he just wants to get the bathroom set up himself, so he won't trouble their parents. Mom says everyone uses the bathroom Luca built. Dad thinks using so much water is a bit fancy, but he's gotten used to it. He invites his daughter to join them, but she says no. Mom teases Dad, saying he doesn't really know how to help others wash. The amount of water depends on his magic skills, and he can set the temperature just by imagining it. In this village, people don't usually take baths, they just clean themselves with a wet towel. As Luca prepares the bath, his sister rushes in from behind. But Luke still remembers how he used to take baths in his past life, so he wasn't happy with the way the villagers cleaned themselves. The main character couldn't take it anymore, so he used earth magic to turn the pantry into a bathroom. His parents were stunned and had no idea what their son had just done. The boy was feeling emotional at the time and doesn't remember exactly how he managed it, but his parents were happy with what he did. Alice was especially pleased, and everything turned out well. Now Alice asks her brother to do it the usual way, and he agrees. He begins working with the water. Using his magic, he gathers water and splits it into smaller drops. Luca even creates a tiny water figure and starts telling a story. Long ago, Secretariat was born beneath the branches of the great tree. Luca and his sister watch and have fun, enjoying every moment. Alice's eyes shine with excitement as she watches the waterman, along with all the other amazing water creatures nearby. Inspired by fairy tales from his own childhood, he puts together a special water puppet show just for his sister. Luca thought of this clever idea just to make his little sister smile, but honestly, pulling it off takes a lot more effort than you might think. Luke needs to focus his mind and control his magical energy, but this comes easier to him because he's been practicing since he was a kid and always knew he was living a new life in another world. As a baby in this new world, his mind felt clearer, but he can't remember anything from before he was reborn. Luca couldn't really remember anything. It was all like a loud buzzing in his mind, but deep down, he knew for sure that something bad had happened. Luke now has caring parents who use a bit of magic to look after him. After his bath, Sonia gently dries him off, while Edward uses wind magic to help Luke dry even quicker. For the first time, the main character sensed magical power in his mother's milk. He enjoyed drinking it, feeling something amazing with every sip. Luke experimented with using magic as a baby. He realized that the more he repeated the same action, the stronger his magic became, and for the first time, he experienced what it felt like to run out of magical energy. At that moment, Luca felt completely connected to everything around him, almost as if he were soaring through the sky. Luca gazes up at his parents, his eyes wide. Sonia and Edward are crying tears of happiness, realizing that their son had just come so close to losing his life. The village priest arrived just in time, and because of his help, the baby got better. Luca never forgot how happy and relieved his parents looked that day. The main character uses his own magic to cast spells out into the world. This way, he learned how magic works and how to control it. Also, Luca has mastered the skill of drawing magic energy from the world around him. He can take power from water, earth, and air, then turn it into even stronger magic. Since the main character was born into a magical world, he quickly realized that mastering magic could make his life much easier. His sister watches in amazement as he shapes and controls figures made from water right before her eyes. Meanwhile, Luke is happy to make his dear sister smile. Each day, he practices his magic skills, getting a little better. Suddenly, their mother bursts into the room, surprising them both. She tells them it's time to stop. Mom sets the tasty food on the table, and Lucas playfully stirs the drinks with a bit of magic. The table is full of delicious dishes. As everyone sits down together, the family enjoys the meal while Dad shares a story with Lucas. Luke's father explains that his special powers are important and shouldn't be wasted, even for something like a bath. He reminds Luke to use the Force wisely. Then he checks how Luke is feeling, and Luke assures him that he's okay. Luca wonders if he made a mistake, but his father just gives him a big smile and says everything is okay. The father proudly says his wife is a great cook. Alice quickly adds that Mom's food is definitely better than Dad's. It's nighttime and Luca is resting in bed in his room. There's a wardrobe, a bedside table, and slippers next to his bed. Luca isn't expecting too much from his new life. He just wants to feel comfortable. His sister is already fast asleep, holding her favorite soft bunny toy in her hand. Their father sits nearby with their mother, sipping from a mug while a bottle rests beside him. Luca just dreams of a quiet, happy life with his beloved family in the days to come. The sun is up and shining over the mountains, and the rooster has already crowed. Alice wakes up, heads over to her parents, and greets everyone with a cheerful good morning. She starts to wonder where her brother might be. Mom greets her daughter and says Luca is already out in the field. Alice is surprised to hear this. Dad explains that Luca is practicing his magic there. Edward decides he wants to check on his son, and both his wife and daughter wish him good luck. Out in the field, Luca practices his earth magic. Stretching out his arms, he tries to copy the trick he did with the water dolls. Carefully, he gathers up some soil, hoping to shape it into a little doll. The main character creates a doll made up of different pieces, but it all fits together as one figure. Thanks to some magic, the doll comes to life and strikes a fighting pose. Now, the doll is fully prepared. The father looked confused and asked Luca if he had been using earth magic today. Luca said he hadn't, and explained that the doll's name was Bon. He said he made it to look like the skeletons you see in 3D video games, and then he told Bon to get to work. The doll starts using the hoe, and Luca tells his father that this will make their work in the field go much faster. Luca's father is amazed, realizing his son can already handle magic this powerful. The doll crashes to the ground and breaks into pieces. Luke and his dad just stare, stunned. His dad says Luke still needs to figure out how to keep it balanced. Luke hoped it would all go better. His dad warns him not to be shocked if everyone in the village looks at him strangely. The main thing about Luca's life is that he spends his days experimenting with magic far away from the city. He even brings a model skeleton back to its feet, while his father heads over to greet some villagers who are waving and calling his name. Trame is a tiny mountain village with around 200 residents. It's pretty remote, and most of the men work out in the fields nearby. The village was created by the Margrave, who oversees this area. The main reason for building it was to grow a rare magical herb. This valuable plant only grows in special soil and is used to make powerful magic potions. There's a field and you can see people's houses in the background. Luca made a doll that's holding a hoe. He wanted to help everyone work in the field more easily, so he created this doll out of the earth itself to help with the chores. Luca tells me that this clay doll is named Bon. If the main character gives her commands, farm work becomes much easier. Bon uses a hoe in the field while a chicken quietly watches nearby. Luca turns to Lenel for her thoughts. She bursts out, saying what he did was really awesome. Lenel, who grew up with Luca as close as siblings, is also the village chief's granddaughter. The girl knows where the bathroom is and uses it often. Lenel says it reminds her of watching Luca play with Alice, but the boy explains that this isn't just playtime, it's actually a special kind of training. Then the doll falls apart, and Luca comments that helping her is much more difficult. A childhood friend mentions she wouldn't mind seeing Luke's water toys. Luke happily agrees and suggests they check them out together in the bathroom next time. The girl blushes, feeling shy as she pictures the two of them sitting together in the bathroom. The girl runs off, embarrassed, covering her face with her hands and calling out her friend's name. Luca, confused, touches his cheek and wonders why his girlfriend is acting so strangely. Luca and the father walk into the house together. The father happily tells everyone that they're home. The mother greets her husband and son, while the daughter excitedly asks her brother to come with her to the bathroom. Alice's father asked if she wanted to join him today, but she said no. He got upset because he feels it's unfair. Alice always chooses to spend time with Luke instead. The son questions whether their father even realizes how he sounds. Meanwhile, Alice is yelling and crying in the bathroom. Luca is confused when Alice screams, because the doll is still right in front of them. Alice waves her hands, saying she wants a doll you can squish, and she doesn't think this doll is cute anymore. After hearing Alice, Luca finally realizes the problem and says sorry. The boy makes a new figurine for Alice, just like he did before. Alice tells him it's even better now. Luca realizes that, thanks to his training, his dolls look much more lifelike than they used to. The main character makes a new figurine with a lot more muscles than the one he made for Alice. He starts to question if these new dolls are actually unattractive. Luca believes he should change the ball's design, but if he adds more parts, it might be harder to control. He thinks it's smarter to find a way to move all the pieces together, instead of dealing with each one on its own. There had to be a way to make a doll like that, and Luca figured it out. He turned the doll into a single moving piece, so it now looked like a tiny little person. When Alice asked her brother what was going on, he just told her not to worry about it. Controlling multiple parts at once suddenly felt easy. Luke's doll started moving swiftly. With just a bit of focus, everything went smoothly for Luke. This was probably thanks to all his hard training. Alice puffs out her cheeks and insists her doll is way cuter. Luke's strong-looking doll faces off against Alice's adorable doll. Magic still feels like a big mystery to Luke, so he thinks about asking the priest for answers. Then, Mom tells the kids once more to get out of the tub, and this time they listen. The father checks on his son, concerned because using both water and earth magic in a single day is a lot for anyone. He explains that magic energy isn't endless, and most people would never waste so much power controlling earth or animated dolls. Mom just discovered that her son has been playing with dolls. Luca explains that he's not just playing, he's trying to make life better for everyone, not just himself. Mom says she thinks that's wonderful, but she admits the family is worried about him. Luca appreciates the concern and assures everyone he's perfectly fine now. He's not in any danger like when he was a baby. The whole family is shocked. Alice begins to cry, saying she doesn't want her brother to die. Mom quickly reassures everyone that Luca was only joking. Dad calls out to Luca in a worried voice. Suddenly, Luca understands the full impact of what he just said. Something upsetting has happened. The mother gazes at her son, her eyes full of sadness, while holding her crying daughter close to comfort her. The father looks both angry and deeply concerned as he watches his only son. The father tells his son that joking about death is not something they should do. Luca quickly says sorry, and the father smiles, messes up his hair, and reminds him and his sister that it's time for bed. Alice is lying next to her brother, crying and saying she only feels safe sleeping beside him. Luca comforts her, promising that everything will be all right. The father says Luca is always too anxious. Meanwhile, the mother is also worried about their child. Their parents tell Luca that he means a lot to them. Luca and his father are already together, waving toward the fields. Luca's father has a hoe resting on his shoulder, ready for work. Luca carries a small bundle, most likely food for later. Sonia and Alice are walking with Luca and Edward. Many workers are already out in the fields. They wave hello to Luke and his father as the two arrive. Luke's dad reminds him that they need to work hard today. Luke wishes his father good luck too. Today, Luke plans to make a new doll, just like the one he built out of water before. Luke builds a much bigger version of his bathroom doll, but this time using new materials. The large doll now swings with force, striking the ground with a hoe and sending bits of dirt flying everywhere. This doll keeps moving quickly and forcefully across the ground. Luca thinks it's super strong and works really well, but he's sure Alice would cry if she saw it. Luca easily guides the doll he built with only one hand. Luke looks toward the forest, even though it's blocked off by a fence and tall trees that make it hard to see anything. Still, he has a strange feeling that something is coming closer to the village. Meanwhile, the doll is still busy moving around. The main character uses wind magic to create a loud noise. The men instantly notice that it's an alarm. Luca's father rushes over, and Luca quickly tells him to look toward the forest. In a world full of magic, dangerous monsters live too. A man shouts that these are magical forest wolves. Right now, there are 5 of them, but it looks like more could appear soon. They're acting aggressive and getting ready to attack. The man is shocked that they escaped during the day. He quickly warns everyone about the monsters and tells Luke to find the priest and tell him to get all the villagers to safety. Luke is concerned for his dad, but decides to stay and help fight with the others. Luke's father calls out to the archers, telling them to keep the monsters away from the fence and use earth magic to hurl stones at the enemies. Everyone immediately listens to Edward and jumps into action. Lucas insists he should help fight the monsters too, but his father orders him to go to the village instead. Lucas tries to protest, but his father cuts him off before he can say anything. The boy's father insists that kids should always listen to adults. The main character just stares at his dad, completely surprised. The man smiles warmly at his son and tells him that being a father means keeping the family safe no matter what. For now, he's counting on Luca to watch over Alice and Mom. The man boasts that no wild wolves could ever beat him and laughs confidently. Luca just smiles in agreement, but before leaving, he decides to help them anyway. The father is surprised and asks his son what he's doing. The archers grabbed their bows and rushed into the fight. One man quickly tells Captain Ed they're almost out of arrows. Luke's father reassures him, saying everything's under control and more arrows are ready. Meanwhile, Luke hurries off to the village to find the priest. Roger looks ahead and sees a massive pile of arrows, more than enough for every archer to take down every last monster. He's actually a bit stunned by just how many there are. Roger says there must be at least 1,000 arrows here. Captain Ed admits he's often surprised by how strong his son is. When Roger hears that Luca did this on his own, he's even more amazed. Edward asks Roger to give arrows to everyone and says there's no need to call him captain anymore. Roger gets it and starts calling Edward by his first name, just like Luke's father wanted. Luke rushes into the church, where there's a stunning tree mosaic and a giant bell. He shouts that there's big trouble, the mags have broken in. The priest asks Luke to explain what he means about the megastars. The main character explains that his father and the others have chosen to stand up and fight. The grandparents, shocked and worried, say they want to help as well. They decide they should let the headman know what's happening. The Holy Father reassures everyone that things are under control and there's no reason to worry. Luke tells him that his own father said it's time to start moving people to safety. The priest responds that he wants to see what's happening for himself before making any decisions. They leave the church together. The priest uses magic to watch what's happening on the battlefield. He tells everyone that Edward and his team have the upper hand. Luca is amazed that the priest can see so far away. The priest explains that he uses a type of magic that boosts his body's abilities. Edward stands confidently with his sword, while everyone else aims their bows, prepared to fire. The monsters are ready too, baring their sharp fangs and crouching, ready to attack. At the front, Luke's father bravely holds out his sword, facing the wolves. The archers pull their bows back as far as they can and let their arrows fly, sending a storm of arrows and stones straight at the pack lurking in the forest. Arrows and stones fly true, and the wolves are finally beaten. The men cheer, some raising their bows, others holding their swords high in celebration after the victory over the Magsbury. The Holy Father explains that it was the sheer number of arrows that helped drive the monsters back. Luca is glad that the arrows he made helped in the battle against the monsters. The Holy Father is surprised at how many arrows Luca created, and Luca admits he wasn't sure how many would be needed, so he made as many as he could. The Holy Father reflects on Luca's actions. The Holy Father is really impressed with what Luke did and invites him to visit soon because he wants to discuss something important. Luke agrees to come. The monsters have been defeated. The grandfather at the church explains that he just wanted to help save everyone. Luca sees his dad and his friend coming towards him with big smiles. They look happy, and Luca tells them they did great. His dad laughs and says it was super easy. Roger says that Luca's arrows were really helpful for everyone. The men also greet Linnell's father. The Holy Father offers help, but the men laugh and say this battle was actually easier than a day of farm work. The men in the field have already begun gathering the bodies. They'll take the skins and fangs, and since the meat is edible, everyone will get some. Luke's father and Roger arrive to let the Holy Father know what's happening and invite him to join them in the field. He agrees to come along. Luke asks what he should do next. His father tells him that the work is finished for today, so he can go home, get some rest, and let his mother know how things went. Luke waves goodbye to the men, and they wave back to him. The men are sitting in a half circle. Roger mentions that nothing like this ever happened in the forest before, until the monsters showed up in broad daylight. Headman Toastin explains that magic seems to draw these creatures closer. The Holy Father adds that the beasts are drawn to strong power by instinct. Roger wonders if their real target is a magic herb. The Holy Father replies that if the creatures ate plants, this would make sense, but since they're predators, something else must be drawing them in. The Holy Father suggests that Luke may have drawn their attention because he has a lot of magical power. He points out that both the amount and the strength of his magic are impressive. Because of this, wild creatures would be naturally drawn to him, just like they're attracted to delicious food like onions. Luke's father storms away, angrily shouting that he wants something to eat. He grabs the priest by the collar, and the people watching are stunned by his actions. Roger loudly announces his rank, but the headman calls Edward a kid and tells him to stay quiet and calm down. The Holy Father quickly apologizes, admitting he chose the wrong words. Meanwhile, Luke's father is shaking with anger, trying hard to keep his emotions under control. The man comes downstairs and says he's sorry for getting angry. He looks at Edward with worry in his eyes. Roger and the headman talk to him, but he asks them not to speak to him like that. He explains that things are not the same here as they were back in his father's land. Once inside, Luca shares what happened on the field. His mother and sister look at him in shock, while his father sits quietly, deep in thought, realizing that keeping the village and their family safe is now more important than ever. Lucas says he's at home. His mom meets him at the door, holding a broom, ready to ask something, but Lucas starts talking first. He explains that the bodies of the monsters haven't been completely cleaned up yet, so they were allowed to leave earlier than usual. The son asks his mom where Alice is, and she tells him that Alice is taking a nap. Mom adds that Leniel stopped by, helped out with some chores, and played with Alice for a while. Luca asks where Leniel is now, and Mom says she's in the bathroom, washing up. The main character slowly opens the bathroom door and finds Leniel inside. She looks embarrassed, but the main character reminds her that she was curious about the water dolls. He gently tells her he will show her everything now. Suddenly, the house echoes with Leniel's surprised and confused shout. Mom reminds Luke that he can't go into the girls' bathroom without asking. Luke says he understands and promises to knock first next time. The girl says it's okay, and she wasn't expecting him. Mom apologizes, calling her son silly, and the girl smiles, saying it's all fine. Lenny thanks Luca for his help yesterday and mentions that their dad told her how much Luca helped defeat the monsters. Luca says he didn't really do anything and that everything was finished by the time he got to the church. The moment they start talking about the church, the main character suddenly remembers that the priest wanted to see him. Luke arrives at the church on a bright, clear day. As soon as he steps inside, the Holy Father welcomes him warmly. Beside him is a friendly girl who smiles kindly at Luke and says hello. The boy greets the priest and the nun. The priest thanks Luke for bringing the things she promised. The main character confesses that he broke his promise and hurt Leniel. The church sister next to the Holy Father is stunned. Suddenly, Luca starts acting strange and mentions that he's always been forgetful. He admits something feels off and realizes he needs help. He's confused about what's happening to him. His dad and sister become cautious. Luca cries out in frustration, grinding his teeth. The Holy Father walks over to Luke, sits beside him, and gently holds his hand while resting a comforting hand on his shoulder. He reassures Luke that everything is okay. As Luke hears these words, he feels warmth spreading through him, helping him relax and slowly feel at ease. Luke feels calm and connected to the special power of the Holy Father. He tells his dad that he felt something unusual. His dad explains that kids can notice things like this, and staying calm is most important. Then Luke looks over at his sister. Sister Ulrika looks both sad and surprised, with tears streaming down her face. It's clear she wasn't prepared for this moment. The Holy Father asks for Sister Ulrika. She quickly says sorry and rushes off, explaining that she just needs a short break. The main character asks his father about what happened to his sister. The father explains that the sister is very sensitive, not really a child anymore, and that her situation is different. He says that as she grew up, she started to cry more often. Luke decided to ask his father why he wanted to see him. His father told him it was because Luke had incredible magical abilities. Luke was confused and didn't know what his father meant. The Holy Father explains that his body gives off such a strong magical energy, it draws evil beings from outside the barrier. Luke is starting to realize what the priest means. Lucas explains that the monsters from yesterday actually came after him because of his magical abilities. The Holy Father admits that, to be honest, he can't say for sure that this is the absolute reason. The priest explains that there's nothing wrong. He simply wanted to teach Luke how to hold magical power inside himself, and now Luke has mastered this skill. Luke thanks his father. His father explains that he only uses his magic when it's really needed and not just for show. He also says that practicing on your own can only take you so far. Luke has actually been learning special techniques ever since he was a child. The Holy Father is passing on his power, and Luke stands there completely still, amazed by what he's seeing right in front of him. Luke understands he's nowhere near as powerful as the Holy Father's magic. He's surprised the Holy Father kept so much magic hidden, but the Holy Father insists that he's still not as strong as Luke, the main character. The Father realizes that since Luca can see magical power, his senses are working well. The Holy Father decides to teach Luca how to hide his magic. Luca is grateful and thanks him. The Holy Father explains that every living being has a special magic inside them. This magic is what makes different spells possible. As he crosses his arms, a glowing thread of fire appears and circles around him. Father explains that to save magic energy, the bow pulls in and combines magic from around it. Luca starts thinking about how this works and begins to question if everything he was taught growing up was wrong. Since Luke is just a baby, he doesn't know the actual names for the New World's techniques, so he decides to make up his own. He calls the chakra a spot where magical energy gathers. The cycle is when you use magical power from outside your body, and magical oscillation is what he calls using magic directly. Actually, it turns out that the main terms used here match the ones in his own world. Chakra means compression, circulation stands for absorbing magic, and magical fluctuations are really just mixing. Realizing this made Luke uneasy, and he grabbed his head in confusion. The Holy Father explains that the trick is easy. He says you just need to cover most of the bow's magical energy with a thin, invisible layer of magic. This makes it so no one else can sense the magic hidden inside. That's how you keep it a secret. The priest sees that Luke looks a bit pale and asks if he's feeling okay. Luke quickly says he's fine and now understands what a cover-up means. Father tells Luke that since he understands what hiding means, he should try it right now. Luke isn't too sure, but he decides to give it a shot. Luke focuses his energy, surrounding himself with power. He now looks just like the Holy Father did when he used the concealment. The man glances at the main character, quickly assessing Luke. By the satisfied look on his face, it's clear he's impressed with how well Luke hides his presence. The Holy Father touched his chin and said that Luke was actually pretty good at hiding things. Luca thanked his father and promised to keep training hard. He said goodbye and hurried back home. His father called out, telling Luca to be careful. The Holy Father is worried about Luke. He noticed that Luke seemed really down lately and wonders what could have happened. The priest walks over to the old wooden door with iron decorations and opens it easily. The door swings wide, making a loud creaking sound. As you open the door in front of the man, you see a huge tree with a wide trunk, surrounded by bright flowers. Sunlight shines straight onto this spot. The man is asked if Luca has already gone home. He says yes, Luca just left, and then he turns to Vulcan. The man explains that the girl is actually a priestess. He gently asks her why she's been crying. The priestess says she became very upset because Luca got hurt. She adds that it's not the child's fault. Meanwhile, the Holy Father watches them with tired eyes. The priestess says that not even this holy tree can keep him safe, and she places her hand on its trunk. The father glances up at the top of the tree. Welkin says this is a special, ancient tree that keeps the land safe and grows its roots deep into the earth around it. The girl explains that the tree was meant to keep him safe and hide all his magic. The Holy Father then says that even with the barrier, Luke's magic was just too strong to stay hidden forever. My father wonders if it's because Luke has an incredible amount of magical power. The priestess explains that it isn't about how much magic he has, but about the special kind of power inside him. She says it's not just high quality, but an absolute purity that makes it unique. The priestess explains that even though a barrier was put up around the bow, its light was still too strong, and that's how the monsters found it. Father reassures her that it's not her fault. She tries to calm herself down, feeling thankful that he taught her how to hide. They'll be safer because of it. The woman removes her headdress, revealing her elf ears. She says she and the Holy Father work together to protect this tree, and thanks to their efforts, the village stays safe and peaceful. Welkin mentions she's half-elf and still has a lot to learn because she's pretty young. The Holy Father jokes that if she's young, then compared to her, he's just a baby. The girl with elf ears asks with a sweet smile if the Holy Father is really calling her old. The father looks surprised and flustered by her question, quickly explaining that he didn't mean it like that at all. The priestess assures everyone that all is well, and the elves actually take pride in how old they are. She explains that her people are like trees. They grow and change slowly over time, and that's something special. Sister Wilkin goes on to say that even though they seem really young, they are actually considered old for humans. But compared to other elves, they are still like little kids just starting out. The girl explains that elves originally came from a group called the High Elves. High Elves always look young, and even as they get older, they barely show any signs of aging. The priestess warns that if the Holy Father ever meets the High Elves, he shouldn't make fun of how they look, because they might react dangerously. Holy Father, I've made sure to remember this advice. The girl says she's not the only one who deserves thanks. The Holy Father is confused by her words. She reminds him not to forget the man who discovered the sacred tree and asked the elves to send a priestess here. The priestess smiles and explains that this man is the reason the village exists today. The Holy Father nods and thanks everyone, saying he appreciates the sacred tree, the priestess, and especially the Margrave. In a big open field, Luca is lying down, thinking to himself that, of course, in a world full of magic, every spell probably already has a name. He feels embarrassed about how he acted, like a silly teenager, and now shame is washing over him. Luca rolls around on the grass, covering his face with his hands. Luca quickly sits down and starts using compression, absorption, and mixing all at once, saying it's the only way. A powerful light flashes, and just before the monsters can see anything, the main character hides it all with a concealment technique. After using all the spells together, a mysterious round object suddenly appears. Luca is curious and confused. He has no idea what it could be. When all the magic is aimed at Luke, this strange stone-like sphere forms at the edge of the area. The main character lets out a sigh of relief, feeling better now that he's let his feelings out. He notices it's getting late and says he should head home. He leaves the stone he made behind on the ground. Luke's mother welcomes him home and mentions he's late today. Luke explains that he went to church, where he discovered some interesting things about magic. His father asks him to show what he learned, but Luke says he's too tired. Seeing this, his father understands. Meanwhile, Luke's mother says that Alice has been waiting for him to use the bathroom. The boy says he's too tired today, so Alice will get to play with the dolls a lot more than usual. The girl just sighs sadly, while their parents smile at their sweet kids. The wife asks what happened to their son. The husband explains that the spell used is called Concealment, and it's meant to keep their beloved son hidden and safe from danger. A rooster crows outside as sunlight fills everything with a warm glow. The wife smiles while she slices an apple. The husband sits with one leg over his chair, rubbing his chin and watching closely, his lips pursed in curiosity. Luke says that yesterday the Holy Father showed him how to hide things, but he's not sure if he's good at it yet. As he explains, he opens his mouth just a bit and reaches his hand out in front of him. My father says that if someone stands just 20 steps farther away, no one on his level would even see him there. Luke asks if 20 steps really makes that much of a difference. The man insists that it's true. He wouldn't be able to spot that person either, and it's actually pretty impressive. The main character says he wants to find a new way to hide his magical powers. His father looks at him, surprised and curious about what different method he could possibly use. Lucas says that even when he felt disappointed in himself, he managed to discover something new. Before you build a shield of magic around you, you have to make some space first. His cheeks are slightly red, showing that he's excited. After making his own space, the main character moved all its magic into his body. Then, he created a new outer shell around the space, but this shell had no magic power at all. A glowing shell formed around the bow. The technique that the Holy Father showed Luke can hide magic using a single protective layer, but Luke's own way is to form 2 layers of magical energy at once. Right now, the only thing on Luke's mind is whether he can pull this off. The parents stare at their son in shock, their mouths wide open. The father is so surprised he falls off his chair and loses a slipper. The mother drops her cut apple and gasps, covering her mouth with her hand. Meanwhile, Luca is eager to see what they think of his perfect hiding trick. The father tells everyone that his son isn't in the room. The mother worries and asks if their son is all right. Luca quickly reassures them, saying he's okay and even waves his hands to show it. Suddenly all 3, mother, father, and Luca, look shocked as a loud scream echoes through the house. Alice runs to her brother, crying. Luca is confused and reaches out to comfort his little sister. The girl says she doesn't want her brother to go away. Luca reassures her, telling her that everything is okay and he's not going anywhere. The father is impressed by how well his son can hide. It was so good, he actually thought his son was gone. Mom tells Luca not to use such a strong hiding ability unless it's really necessary. Luca promises his mom that he'll only use his hidden powers when there's a real reason. Luca discovers that Alice can feel his magic even when he's far away. Their father asks Alice if she knows where her brother is, and she replies that she always knows exactly where Luca is. Alice comes downstairs and wants to show everyone where she senses Luke when he's gone. She explains that when Luke wakes up, she can always feel him right there, and she points to a specific spot. The rest of the family looks surprised. It's clear that the place Alice indicated is the house itself. The father is amazed that his daughter can sense her brother from such a long distance. In the background, there are hills and a single house sitting at the top of a mountain, with a path leading up to it through fields and more mountains beyond. Edward is amazed that Alice can sense her brother's magic from so far away, even when he's out in the fields. Lucas thinks it's really good for his sister. The father laughs and says that she really is his daughter with Sonia. The mom smiles and agrees. Lucas says he'll keep his magic powers hidden so no dangerous creatures can find him. His sister asks again how he plans to stay hidden. Luke starts using his concealment ability, but this time it's a bit easier, especially for Alice. When she can't sense his power at all, Alice says it's fine, because this is her unique way of feeling close to her brother. Luke wonders if he's really that bad at hiding. His dad looks surprised and reassures him that he's actually a great kid. Mom, shocked, covers her mouth and says that Alice can just sense his magical energy really well. Alice smiles with a gentle blush and says it's because she loves him deeply. Luca nods, thanks Alice, and softly pats her head. The father feels proud of his children because they've grown up to be so intelligent. His eyes shine with happiness, and he believes his own father would feel proud of his grandchildren too. From inside the house, someone calls everyone to come for breakfast, and after enjoying their meal together, the father and son will head out to work in the fields. Luke's father is sent back in time. Some men standing near a barrel with snacks and a bottle ask if he's really bringing flowers for his sweetheart. The man with the bouquet just smiles and jokes that he actually told them not to drink in the city center. They mention that it's impossible to meet Margerb's son in the city. Then they laugh, calling themselves fools, because they already know he's just a concubine's child, an ordinary person just like them. The men tease him, saying he keeps repeating himself, but at least he's educated. They joke that he should hurry up and marry his girlfriend, or else the drinks saved for the wedding will go to waste. He just laughs it off, but secretly starts thinking it might really be time to get married. The guy remembers his past. Shadowy figures with mocking faces used to whisper that he was just a concubine's son, and they gossiped that his mother died when he was born. His dad told him not to stress about what people say behind his back because he's his son. Ed said he got it and wouldn't let it bother him. Edward is a little boy, lying under a blanket all by himself, thinking sadly about why his mother is gone and why he has to be alone now. The young man keeps walking with flowers in his hands, totally lost in his own thoughts. He's not paying attention to anything around him, thinking only about what it would be like to start a family. Suddenly, the guy snaps back to reality on the street. He hears a familiar voice yelling at someone to stop whatever they're doing. A man keeps hugging a girl tightly, saying her name and telling her everything is okay. The girl asks him to let her go. He promises that he will love and take care of her. Sanika tells him she doesn't want this because she already loves someone else. Ed quickly shoots up and lands a punch right on the guy's face, knocking him backward. Sonia, with tears streaming down her face, runs off and calls out for Edward. The guy is really angry now, but he knows he has to look out for his girlfriend. Edward quickly gets ready to defend himself as 3 guards point their swords at him. Sonia calls out to Edward, worried about his safety. Meanwhile, the guard who was struck demands to know why Edward hit him, angrily asking who Edward thinks he is. Edward frowns at the man, clearly not happy. Sonia quickly tells Edward to calm down, reminding him that they don't know who this stranger is. In the background, there's a breathtaking building that looks like a church, and right in its center, you can see a large tree growing inside. A broad-shouldered man, who seems to be the father of the injured young man, stands up and says that even though the person who attacked his son is the Margrave's child, he still wants him to be strictly punished. His own son sits beside him, legs crossed and a bandage on part of his face. Edward believes this man might soon lead the Viscount family. Edward sits next to his father, hands tightly folded, looking down. His father explains that Edward deeply regrets what he did and hopes you will understand. The father explains that his son will be released from the army and sent to work in restricted lands near the border, where he'll help develop the area. All the money earned there will go toward paying compensation. Edward just sits quietly beside his father, saying nothing. Also, Edward can't leave the area until he pays for the damages. As they keep talking, we find out that these forbidden lands are a risky place where only elves and dragons live. Surprisingly, the person who got hurt seems to really enjoy all of this. The elderly bearded man, who seems to be the priest here, explains that under the laws of their god, Edward will have to pay compensation. They'll also use a magical contract on him, making sure he can't leave the forbidden lands until he has paid everything he owes. Edward's father sits with the family, watching his son as Edward stands before the priest. The priest, standing by the altar, asks Edward if he agrees. Edward places his hand over his heart and says yes. But the man who was struck tightens his fist and says it's not enough to make up for what was done to him. The father behind him is shocked, can't believe what he's seeing, and reaches out as if to stop his son, but then hesitates and doesn't act. The young man suggests paying compensation using products from the Forbidden Lands, and even adds that tax evasion should be punished by death. The father calls his son an idiot. The priest then looks to the Margrave, who agrees with the proposal. The Margrave looked clearly upset and asked if the Viscount was sure this needed to happen. The man seemed surprised and tried to speak up, but his son quickly stopped him. The Viscount's son then said that everything was agreed already. Everyone stood apart, leaving Edward in the middle. The Holy Father spoke, announcing that by the power of the God of the Covenant, a magical contract would now be placed on Edward. Suddenly, a bright beam of light shone down on him, lighting up the huge room and even reaching out to the balcony. In the house, Edward's father sits and admits that his son has made mistakes. He then raises his finger, asking Toshton to bring him a drink. Toshton is already there, holding a bottle on a tray, and hands it to him politely. Edward sits across from his father, looking truly sorry for what happened today. He has felt bad about it all day, and now he apologizes to his dad. My father laughed softly, but he still praised his son for standing up for the woman he clearly cares about deeply. Edward warns that it's unwise to try controlling lands where elves and dragons live. Ed asks his father if he knows the rumors about elves. His father replies that upsetting a half-elf might not matter, but angering a true elf could cause an entire country to vanish. The father warns that upsetting the high elf could bring about disaster for everyone. Edward looks worried and admits that elves can be extremely dangerous to humans. Edward's father, holding a drink, turns to Eureka and asks if it's really true. The girl nods and says that, for the most part, it is. Edward just sits there, stunned, his eyes wide with shock. The girl introduces herself as Ulrika, a half-elf, and tells Edward she's happy to meet him. She reassures him that, unlike full elves, she doesn't hold grudges, so he has nothing to worry about. Edward smiles at the girl and tells her it's an honor to meet Mrs. Half-Elf. Edward's father mentions that he invited her himself and takes a drink from his glass. Meanwhile, the butler stands quietly behind him, watching Edward and the girl closely. The man also mentions there's a sacred tree on his new land. Edward is amazed and starts to wonder if this could be a part of the legendary world tree that is said to protect everything. The half-elf explains that Mr. Christoffel requested a priestess who can connect with the sacred tree. Edward's father adds that Dorica is here to become a priestess, and thanks to her abilities, paying any compensation won't be a problem for them. My father says there's a lot of valuable magic grass growing there. If they sell it, they'll be able to pay off all the debts right away. Edward is surprised and realizes his father's plan worked perfectly. The man laughs, proud of himself, and says it's no wonder he's the Margrave. The Margrave says the Viscount's family is surprisingly foolish when it comes to their views on the death penalty. He never thought they could be this clueless. Margrave says this man doesn't realize what trouble he's bringing on himself with his bold words and reckless actions today. He lifts a glass of alcohol to his lips, while his stern-faced butler watches closely from behind. Father says Toshton and the top farmers will join Ulrika to turn the Forbidden Land into Richland. The son thanks him for this plan. Then Edward brings up Sonia. Father is curious about what Edward wants to do about her. Edward thinks it could be best to end the relationship. He's concerned they may never get a chance to meet again. The father tells Edward he should say this directly to his beloved. Edward is confused, not sure what his dad means, and glances at the door in surprise. Ulrika gestures towards the girl who just walked in, noticing her sad expression. Edward calls out the name of the girl he loves. Sonia quietly says her lover's name, holding her fist to her heart. The girl starts to say sorry, blaming herself for what happened, but Edward says it's actually his fault and she shouldn't worry. He tells her he'll leave and she can stay here. Sonia runs to her beloved, calling out that she wants to go with him too. Edward quickly stops her by calling out her name. The girl says she can only be truly happy when she's with Edward. Tears run down her face as she looks him right in the eyes. The man gazes back at her with gentle warmth. The girl promises she'll always stay by Edward's side. The guy says he feels the same and deeply wishes for them to be together forever. The Margrave tells Toshton there's one more thing to sort out before they head to the Forbidden Lands. Toshton nods, placing his hand over his chest and covering one eye in agreement. In a church, a man turns to Edward, who is dressed in a suit, and Sonia, who is wearing a wedding gown. He asks them if they promise to love and support each other, no matter what, through sickness and health, and even when life takes them to unexpected places. They all say yes together. Sonia cries tears of happiness, while Edward stands by her side, smiling with pride. The guests cheer for them and lift their mugs in celebration. Edward's father nods with approval and wipes away happy tears. Ulrika beams, feeling thrilled for the young couple. Here's the house where the whole family lives today. It's been a year since Edward and the others moved out. Now, Edward rushes into the house, out of breath, calling out to his wife. A young mother sits in a room with a priestess and an elderly woman, gently holding her newborn son, wrapped in a blanket. She smiles at her husband and tells him they have a baby boy. Suddenly, the baby starts to cry loudly in her arms. Everyone in the room is happy for Edward and Sonia. The man wipes away a tear and says Sonia is wonderful, thanking her warmly. She gently offers to hold his son, while the elderly lady, who looks like a priestess, smiles kindly as she watches the scene. The man smiles warmly as he lifts the child into his arms, proudly saying his son is amazing too. Edward gently cradles the baby in his large hands. Sonia laughs happily, enjoying this sweet moment. Edward sees that the child has black hair, which is different from his own golden hair and Sonia's brown hair. The child stares at his father with wide, curious eyes, looking completely amazed. Grandma smiles and says it's pretty uncommon for kids to be totally different from their parents. The priestess, with a stern and commanding presence, directly asks Edward if he thinks his wife has been unfaithful. Edward is clearly surprised by the question and quickly insists that he would never suspect his beloved wife of such a thing. The man gently lifts the baby in both hands and proudly announces, his name will be Luca. His wife sits on the bed, smiling with happiness. This is the house where they all live together as one big family. Edward now calls them his beloved family. Edward is working in the field with the other men. They rush over to him, at first calling him by his old title, but then quickly switching to the correct one. Edward almost replies in the old way too, but catches himself and uses the right words for the headman. The headman then announces that Luke is in serious danger. Edward is stunned by the news. The Holy Father says Luke could die now because he relied only on his own magic. Suddenly, someone from the family shouts from inside the house. It sounds like Edward, asking what exactly the Holy Father meant. The priest warns that their baby will die if nothing is done. Edward urgently asks how they can save Luca. Sonia holds her head in disbelief, struggling to accept what she's hearing. The man explains that if both parents have magic, their child's magical abilities can also be awakened. Sonia and Edward talk about their own powers. The Holy Father confirms this and says their child will awaken too. Edward and Sonia sit on either side of Luke and start channeling their magic to him. Edward tells Luke to stay strong. He's ready to give him every bit of his magical power. Edward insists that Luke is his family, his son, and he won't let anyone take him away, not even God. Luke's parents are overjoyed and have tears in their eyes as they see their son awake and looking right at them. Edward promises that no matter what happens, his father will always keep him safe. From here, you can see the whole village laid out like a small model. Luca has grown up a lot. He raises his hands and tells his parents it's time for him to go. He looks totally calm and ready. Father and mother waved goodbye to their son. Luca greeted Lenial with a cheerful good morning while holding a small bag. The girl smiled back at Luca and wished him a good morning too, also holding a little bag in her hand. Sanya explains that Tostin's granddaughter and Roger's daughter are both friends with his son. Since the girl's mother passed away, Roger decided to bring his daughter to live with him in the village. The woman says Luke's condition is still unusual. Edward is surprised and asks if Sonia is talking about the incident when Luke was a baby. Edward's wife explains they already figured out what happened back then, so that's not the reason. Luke works hard in the fields, but others notice he often mumbles to himself and uses magic like it's some intense exercise. As he keeps busy with his tools, Luke quietly says that this is the happiest he's ever been in his new world. Sonia covers her face and starts to cry because their son never smiles like other children do. Edward is confused at first and just stares at his wife, not sure why she's upset. Luke's mom comments once more that their son isn't smiling. You can clearly see that Luke looks lost and distant. Edward assumed that having a family meant everything was okay, but he failed to notice how his son was really feeling. Edward holds his wife, hoping to comfort her. Edward and Sonia take their son to meet the Holy Father and the priestess. Inside, there's a special tree in the room. A woman welcomes Luke and says her name is Sister Ulrika. Luke says hello to her, and his parents stand close behind him. Luke wonders if this might be the sacred tree and mentions how beautiful it looks. The boy keeps staring up at the top of the tree without looking away. We poke a tiny hole in the small ball we have and tell Luca it's a special candy made from the honey of a sacred tree. Luca tries it and smiles, saying it tastes really sweet. The priest laughs and asks Luca to show her all his magical powers. The priestess looks really surprised. She tells them there's nothing to worry about, so Luca and his mother are free to go home, but asks his father to stay a little longer. Sonia thanks the priestess. As they leave, Edward is confused about why he has to stay behind. The Holy Father is stunned when the priestess suddenly lunges at Luke's father, moving so fast her headpiece falls off. She grabs him by the throat before he can react or say a word. Ulrika wants to know why there's contract magic on the bow. She realizes this isn't a sacred contract from God, but one created by the devil. Edward, frustrated, tries to ask Ulrika what her sister really means. Edward has no idea how the devil's contract ended up on the bow. He insists he'd never harm his beloved family, and he'd never hurt his own son. The priestess is still gripping Luke's father by the throat. Meanwhile, the Holy Father speaks directly to the priestess. The priestess lets the man go and apologizes, assuring him that Edward isn't really like that. Edward says it's all good, and he's happy they can now understand each other. Behind the priestess, Ulrika and the Holy Father are standing. He asks what the priestess meant about a deal with the devil. She explains that she sensed something dark within him. This force is dark and closely connected to magic. The priestess explains that when the onion ran out of its energy, a crack appeared, allowing this darkness to slip in. The Holy Father adds that Luke had truly used up all his magic and the innocence of his childhood. Edward happily announces that his magic powers and his wife's support helped heal him. The other man suddenly shouts, as if something important just hit him. Edward is shocked when he realizes the contract's magic is actually affecting him, and he understands that what happened to Luca is really his own fault. The priest explains that now everything makes sense. When Luke passed his magic to his son, the contract's magic also moved inside him. The Holy Father says this is how the contract was actually formed. Edward can't stop thinking that all the trouble with Lucas is his fault. He even remembers a moment from the past, when the Viscount's son talked about how breaking a contract could mean the death penalty. The Holy Father wonders if the priestess's magic can heal him. Ulrika sadly says it won't work, and trying could actually hurt him, or even put Luke in danger. Edward asks what they should do next, and the priestess tells them to just observe for now. The priestess explains that once Edward finishes paying for all the goods from this forbidden land as agreed in his contract, Luke's contract might be cancelled entirely. Ulrich's sister thinks it's smarter to get help instead of trying to end the contract by yourself. Luke is in a better place now because his dad and his family are all supporting him. Edward seems very focused. The priestess promises to help him as much as she can. Edward bows his head and thanks Ulrika with genuine gratitude. Edward, Sonia, and Luca are on their way to a picnic. Sonia has a hat on, and Edward is carrying a big backpack filled with supplies. My dad believes it's going to be a great day. He and Luca enjoy fishing together. Edward helps his son reel in the fish, always ready to lend a hand. He feels confident that as long as he's there, he can keep his son safe. Edward is holding the reins while sitting on a horse, with little Luca in front of him looking a bit scared. Edward can reassure his son that as long as they're together, everything will be all right. Luke's father wants to remind him not to worry about people who judge him or give him strange looks. After all, Luke is Edward's much-loved son. The whole family sits together under a tree, sharing some tasty homemade sandwiches. Mom smiles warmly as she enjoys hers with onions. Dad gently pats Luke on the head, and Luke looks up at him with admiration. The family is finally together again, right where they belong. Luke calls for his dad, and his father happily joins him. Sonia smiles warmly at her family and happily announces that they have a baby girl. She gently holds the newborn, but suddenly the little girl starts crying and wailing loudly. Luca looks at the child with surprise. Edward happily announces the girl's name will be Alice. A priestess and their grandmother are there too, both smiling with joy. Edward gently helps Luca hold Alice, their new baby sister. The boy gently rocks Alice and sings to her until she falls asleep. Alice is older now, and Luca enjoys playing with her toys. Luke's sister is growing up too, and now he takes her hand to help her walk on the grass outside. Watching them, Edward and Sonia feel truly happy. Luca is finally smiling. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, he uses his magic to shape playful figures from water. Alice is happy too, reaching out her hands with a big smile to touch the watery creations. Edward thanks Sonia. His wife looks at him, her eyes full of tears. Edward also thanks his daughter and son. No matter what, they are still his children, even with the magic contract. Tears run down Edward's face and drop onto the floor. Edward has a loving family and he feels incredibly happy. He hugs them tightly, smiling with joy. Sonia holds little Alice and leans close to her husband. Luca rests his hand on his father's chest, looking up at him with admiration. In this moment, their family is truly joyful. Right now, the men on the ground watch Luke and his dolls with confused looks. Luke explains that his daily practice has finally paid off, and he's now able to control all three of his homemade dolls at the same time. Suddenly, Luke hears a beep while he's working. The main character explains that he uses wind magic to send voice commands, and he imagines that one day he could even create full songs with it. Edward smiles, noticing how much Luke enjoys practicing magic, and scratches the back of his head. Even with everything going on, the man complains about how loud it is. Luca recoils at his father's words, and Luke's dolls copy his scared reaction. The man standing behind Edward just gives an awkward smile. Luke's dad explains that wind magic is meant for emergency signals, not for scaring people. Luke says sorry to his dad, but Edward points out that he should actually apologize to all the townspeople who are standing there. Lucas says sorry to the men, and they give him friendly smiles, letting him know there's no problem. Luke's father is impressed that his son has learned so much about magic all by himself and feels really proud. Edward also sees that Luke is ready to start his own journey with magic now. The scene is now inside the church. The priest thanks everyone for coming today. He says they'll be talking about something very important in their lives. The priest stands at the podium, and Sister Ulrika stands beside him. Sonia sits on the bench, smiling as she watches Luke, Alice, and Lionel's reactions. They're all together on the same seat. In their village and in this world, magic is the most important thing in people's lives. Luke glances at his father and the priestess, surprised by what he sees. The boy sitting in the front row claims he can do magic without any lessons. The Holy Father replies that magic doesn't actually need a lot of training to be used. Everyone in the room listens closely to what the Holy Father is saying. The Holy Father asks Aiden what kind of magic he can do. Aiden says that everyday magic is the easiest, and he quickly demonstrates it. Suddenly, Aiden's father gets angry and hits him because Aiden accidentally burned him. The father demands to know what his foolish son is doing. The priest explains that what we call the magic of everyday life got its name because it's meant to be used in daily routines, not to replace them. Its official name is creation magic. It has 4 main powers: water, fire, earth, and air. Anyone can learn to use these. Luca touches his chin with his finger, and his little sister copies him. He suddenly realizes that when he made dolls from water and earth, he was actually using the magic found in everyday life. The Holy Father explains there were different kinds of magic too. He reaches out his hand toward Adam's. Father Adna stares at the Holy Father, clearly surprised. Life magic can be used to heal wounds, but it doesn't work on the magician themselves. The Holy Father showed Adam how this works by quickly healing Adam's burned fingers, likely hurt by some everyday accident. He didn't thank the Holy Father and just said he doesn't feel any pain now. Luca thinks about this, resting his chin on his fingers, and realizes that even magic can have different types. The Holy Father says that God is full of the magic of life. Then, he suddenly makes a funny noise and jokes that sometimes life is just that simple. Everyone around him bursts out laughing as they look at the Holy Father. My father says it's time to talk more about other kinds of magic, especially amplification. He thinks everyone here should learn about it. Everyone looks at him, listening carefully. Aiden excitedly talks about the game, claiming he knows exactly how to use it, but his father tells him it's not really an improvement like he thinks. Confused, Aiden looks at his father and asks what he means. The Holy Father said that, sadly, the boy only boosted his own magic power. Aden guesses the Holy Father is probably joking. Aden wants to look cool, so he asks his father what he should do to make that happen. The Holy Father says that if Aden wants to be cool, he just needs to keep practicing, and everything will turn out well. Eventually, he'll notice a sudden change in how he feels. That's called unlocking new powers or learning new skills. Luke finally gets what his father means. He realizes he managed to put together the dolls he made early on, and that's what sparked a new skill. It's about making a doll from separate pieces, and one where all the parts have been joined into a single whole. But Luke gets confused when the Holy Father talks about learning new skills. Suddenly, Luke starts to fart, and Lineal can't help but watch him with curiosity as he daydreams. Luca thinks the name reminds him of games he used to play in his previous life. By now, Alice is asleep in her mother's arms, and her mother is watching Luca with a bit of surprise. The Holy Father asks the crowd if anyone knows which magic gives strength and which god controls this power. Aiden guessed that the magic is called amplification magic and that it also has something to do with God, but his father tells him that he's not correct. Luke sits quietly, looking thoughtful as he tries hard to figure out the answer to the Holy Father's question. Sonia gently holds her sleeping daughter Alice in her arms. Luca glances at Renale in surprise as she lifts her hand and explains it was the magic of power, a gift from the god of strength. Their father agrees that this is true. Luca, impressed by what happened, says it's amazing, and the girl blushes shyly. Building a strong body and quick reactions is really important. Only one country uses special words like ki and aura to talk about magical power. The The Holy Father talks about different kinds of magic, like the magic of creating things, the magic of life itself, and the magic of having power. His sister stays quietly behind him, while everyone else listens closely to what he says. My father always says that some magic is so incredible, you only hear about it in stories and old books. This is about the magic of creation. She has the power to control everything around her. The magician uses a staff to guide the bird while holding a book in the other hand, showing her complete control over the world. The Holy Father explains that besides the four main elements, we also have light and darkness. Each one connects with the basic elements, so the main attributes are water, fire, air, earth, along with darkness and light. You can figure out an attribute in many ways, like using spells, magic circles, or different techniques. The Holy Father explains that the wonders of creation could be seen as a kind of magic, but it's God who truly holds this amazing power. The priest goes on to explain that the power of creation doesn't need any special tools or ingredients. It simply comes from the imagination of the person who chooses to use it. The Holy Father explains that people who already know how to use magic realize just how easy and useful it can be. Luke wonders if his magic can actually turn his ideas into reality, almost like he has the power to create things from nothing. He recalls all the times he made water dolls and mud figures with his magic. Dan rubbed the back of his head and asked the Holy Father, "What's the difference between everyday magic and the magic of creation? Both can make things like fire and water, right?" The Holy Father smiled and praised Dan for asking such an important question. The Father says that God, who created everything, is behind the wonder of creation, and all the gifts he gives make our lives a lot simpler and better. There is a special force that can create the four main elements: fire, water, earth, and air. People often confuse this magical power of creation with ordinary, everyday magic. For example, someone might think warming up by a fire, drinking fresh water, or feeling a gentle breeze is the same as creation magic, but it's not. The Father touches the candle with his finger, and it lights up magically. He explains that everyday magic follows certain rules, and he's going to show how it works. The Holy Father can light a candle, and it will keep burning, but the way creation works is very different from this simple magic. Now Lucas starts paying closer attention, while his sister is still fast asleep. Using creation magic, the Holy Father can make fire appear from nothing. He shaped the flames into a firebird and sent it soaring straight through the air. Aiden watched in awe, amazed by what he saw. The Father explains that if you take away all the magic energy from a fire, it will disappear immediately, leaving no trace behind. This is what happens with the firebird. When he snaps his fingers, the fire goes out just like that. Using simple magic, anyone can make clean drinking water appear. Just hold a glass, fill it with water, and enjoy a cool, refreshing drink. But you can't use creation magic to make drinkable water. It's just like trying to drink air. Even if you have a full glass, it won't actually satisfy your thirst. Aiden says that everyday magic is actually more helpful than the magic of creation. His father warns him not to get cocky, since he doesn't really understand how to use everyday magic properly yet. But the Holy Father agrees with Aiden. The real magic in everyday life comes from the gift of being alive. This amazing power is given to everyone by the kind and caring goddess who made their whole world. Luke's face suddenly shows surprise and realization. Now he finally gets what's happening. When the mana runs out, objects made by creation magic vanish too. Still, there are a few exceptions to this rule. Even when Luca ran out of mana, the clay dolls he made didn't vanish. They just stopped moving but stayed perfectly intact. Luca remembers being pretty proud of what he made back then, although his father said the dolls looked a bit creepy. So he wasn't really using magical powers, just some clever tricks from daily life. Now Luca is totally lost and doesn't get what's going on at all. In the end, Luca silently thanks him, even if no one really understands what's going on. Some people in the room are laughing and smiling. Then, the Holy Father points out that the main difference between these two kinds of magic is that you use different parts of your body for each one. The crown holds the energy of the god of life. The forehead carries the power of the god of the covenant. The throat lets you shape magic into reality. The heart holds more life energy. Just above the navel, you find the strength of the god of power. Below the navel is where mana collects, ready to flow wherever you need it. Aiden thought for a moment, then admitted he was still confused. Everyone laughed. The Holy Father explained that there are many types of magic. If you learn what each type does, you can become a better magician more quickly. The magic of creation, also known as the magic of everyday life, uses the power of the four elements. Once something is created with this magic, it can continue to exist on its own, without any help from a magician. The magic of power, which I also call aura, boosts your body and sharpens all your senses. The magic of life can help heal others and even create new things. Sometimes it's called the magic of everything because it uses all 6 types of power, but it only works as long as there's energy left to use. The Holy Father unexpectedly calls Luke to step forward and show what he can do. Luke is surprised that he was chosen. El Neil wishes him good luck, and Aiden jokes, telling Luke not to get burned. Luke just smiles and stays positive. The Holy Father asks Luca to show him any spell he can do. Luca decides to use an easy one. The Holy Father just wants to see how quickly Luca is learning magic, and the sister figures out right away what he's trying to do. Lucas reaches out with both arms and forms a water doll that Alice really enjoys. Meanwhile, the priest and priestess keep a close eye on Lucas. The girl woke up right away, as if she had never been asleep, and called out to her doll, Poon, by name. The Holy Father mentioned that Luke has a special kind of simple, everyday magic. Luca is shocked by what his father says and asks if he's really not using creation magic, because it definitely looks like it. The priestess tells Luke that everyday magic can be used to make all sorts of shapes. The most common ones are spheres and cubes. The god of creation gave them this magic to help with daily tasks. As she speaks, the priestess's sister spins some shapes around her finger. Luke closes his eyes and realizes he understands the magic in everyday life well enough to shape it in many different ways. But making a firebird like the Holy Father did isn't possible just by using regular magic. Luca explains that it's much simpler to use the little bits of magic we find in daily life, instead of making human-like dolls and trying to animate them. His sister looks at him, puzzled, not quite sure what he means. The priestess is shocked and can hardly believe what she's hearing. Everyday magic is just a small piece of the Creator God's power, the God who made this world. Humans aren't anywhere close to God's level. Only the Creator God is allowed to use this special magic to make something like a person. Farmer rushes into the church, holding a strange round stone in his hands. This is the stone Luke made when he was angry and upset with himself. The farmer shows everyone the stone, saying he found it at the edge of the village and that he's never seen anything like it before. Luca is shocked because he sees his own stone. The Holy Father is curious and asks about it, since it looks like a rare gem. The priestess requests to hold the stone so she can examine it. Sister Ulrika studies the stone closely, touches it with her finger, and says it responds to magic energy. The Holy Father calls this stone very unusual, but the sister answers that it looks totally harmless to her. But Sister Ulrika suggests that it's best to keep this strange stone. Everyone glances at her, a bit confused. Luke realizes he completely forgot about this stone and just rushed through, acting mostly on impulse and feelings. The priest lets Luca know their talk is over for today. Luca feels embarrassed when he thinks back to that moment with the stone in the field. The Holy Father asks the priestess how she's handling Luke's magic. She tells him that the power in his bow is amazing. Meanwhile, many children gather excitedly around Luke to try and make something that looks and acts like a real person. Sister Ulrika smiles gently, thinking that Luca probably just has a very wild imagination because of his childhood. You can spot Luke's doll, made from mud, just lying on the ground, but the priestess insists that making something truly human-like isn't possible. In the house of Margrave Christopher Ekelm, a tired and frightened man approaches him. He nervously explains that, after 10 years, they have finally recovered the body of the Viscount family's son. The Margrave says the Viscount's son's carriage tumbled off a cliff into an enchanted forest and offers his condolences. He mentions hearing there's a dangerous monster living in those woods. The man adds that the Viscount has suffered greatly. The Viscount asks if he can build a grave for his son. The Margrave replies that of course he can. It's not even something he needed to ask. The Margrave then thinks about who might be responsible for the accident, but decides it doesn't matter anymore. The Margrave keeps saying that maybe it was actually a blessing from God, since the man's son always did exactly what he wanted until the very end. The Margrave also says that this young man deserves a proper, honorable burial. The Viscount thanks him for this decision. The Margrave tells Nicholas he'll go to the wake. Nicholas suggests they check with the Viscount to coordinate the visit and the next inspection. The Margrave comments that Nicholas is still as sharp and efficient as always, just as he expected. Nicholas, the second son of Tostin, shows the schedule notebook to the Viscount. The Viscount seems surprised and asks if he's really allowed to see something like this. He then mentions that, as a Margrave, he always feels like he's living under a lot of pressure. That's not what the Viscount meant. The Margrave says nothing bad will happen, and even if it does, it's better if it happens to a criminal. He also points out that soldiers and citizens are valuable and shouldn't be risked, since they are the strength of the nation. The Viscount laughs nervously and calls it a funny joke. Nicholas says you shouldn't have made the Viscount so angry. The Margrave claims that out of self-pity, he's ready to harm his own son, which makes the man even angrier. He asks about his son and grandson, and Nicholas says they're both doing well and getting stronger in the village. The Margrave asks Nicholas to send his regards to his father and to Roger. Nicholas promises he will. With hope in his eyes, the Margrave looks up at the sky, trusting that Ed and Luca will stay strong and not give in to the curse. There's a big tree with a thick trunk, covered in tons of flowers. In a wide clearing, there are even more flowers everywhere. A girl with elf-like ears starts laughing, saying she can definitely sense something magical here. She smiles with satisfaction, looking ahead, and says she can feel the magic crystal's power. Flower petals swirl gently around her. She finds a magical crystal and can't help but wonder who made it. Looking around, she sees a large area surrounded by mountains and forests, all enclosed by a fence and a warning sign. In a spooky forest, twisted trees bend over to form an archway. On the ground, you can see patches of sticky slime with centipedes crawling nearby. Bugs scurry around, while swarms of mosquitoes and gnats buzz past. The Viscount stands ready with a knife, trying to protect his home, blaming his foolish son for all their troubles. Meanwhile, the son, confused and scared, shouts from the cart as the horse bolts off a cliff, crashing right through the fence. The slime slowly grows and transforms into the Viscount's son. This creature claims it isn't evil, but also says it will never forgive Edward for what he's done. A happy, smiling girl looks ahead with excitement, pointing her fingers forward as she hums a cheerful tune. The girl takes turns pressing the keys that play the notes do, re, and the final mi. She taps along to the music with a big smile on her face. Next to her, a boy with dark hair points at something and makes a funny noise. The girl taps the next fa key. The main character then uses wind magic to create stepping stones out of air. The main character and a girl are sitting together on the floor. Behind them, some people are talking at a table. Archie taps on some keys, and the boy makes a sound. Archie keeps pressing different buttons, trying to make new sounds, but this way of playing together doesn't last very long. The boy feels dizzy. He wishes there was a way to use fusion, so the keys could play sounds all by themselves. Archie looks at his brother, who seems shocked. Now, the main character realizes what this feeling is. It's like holding a tiny person and moving them around however he wants. He remembers a friendly man once telling him that someday he'd feel a special spark inside, a moment when hidden powers would unlock or new abilities would just click into place. Archie feels even happier now that everything is moving faster. The calm main character explains to her that it's because the keys are making their own sounds now. He senses a new energy inside, like his mind is clearer than before. That's why he's more excited than ever to keep learning magic. One of the men at the table looks at the kids and calmly asks them to quiet down because Tostin is here now. The boy, feeling a bit embarrassed, says sorry to Mr. Tostin and to Ars as well. The man in the shirt says it's fine since he'll be leaving soon. He thanks everyone for their time, says goodbye to Edward and Sonia, and gets ready to go. The smiling man and woman let him know they understand. Toasting steps out of a wooden cabin in the forest. Luca asks Edward what they were discussing. Edward replies that his grandfather will come visit them soon. Lucas stands up and asks if Grandpa is out doing jobs for the Margrave. Archie is excited that Grandpa will visit. Edward says yes, Grandpa works for the Margrave and looks after the harvest in the local villages. Meanwhile, Sonia starts clearing the dishes from the table. The main character watches her grandmother with curiosity. She happily says, "Grandmother," over and over again. Edward laughs and says she's just taking it easy at her grandfather's place. Sony says it still feels a bit sudden. The man explains that it's all because of the monsters. The man recalls a forest filled with rocks. He explains that strange creatures from the magic forest have started showing up in new places. This has caused the local animals to move away. Edward believes they must be scared of something. Monsters are magical creatures that look a lot like humans. You can recognize them by their human-shaped bodies, glowing white eyes, and a wide mouth. Magical beasts are animals that can use magic. The dark dog lowered its head. The main character starts to worry if their village will be affected by all this. Archie grabs her cheeks in fear and says something bad is about to happen. She's really scared. Luca gently hugs his sister. With a warm smile, Edward reassures her that they're safe because the village is guarded by a sacred tree. No monsters can come close. Ever since the village was built, the only animals they've seen are harmless forest wolves. The sun is going down. Edward tells the girl to stay calm and asks the kids to wash up and quietly get ready for bed. Night is coming. Edward and Sonia sit together at the table, while a man holds a mug and a bottle. The serious-looking man hopes nothing goes wrong when the old man arrives. Sonia admits that all these stories about magical beasts are really scary. Sonia, looking worried, says she simply wants all of them to live together peacefully and happily. Edward nods in agreement. Then, they both turn to look at Luke, who is standing in the middle of the room and yawning. They can't believe the kids are still up. Luca is holding a little girl who's crying. The main character explains that she got scared after hearing a story about monsters. The main character says sorry and explains he didn't mean to be out so late. Edward and Sonia glance at him, clearly surprised. Edward hugs Luke and laughs, saying there's no need to say sorry, they're family. It's okay to stay up late together sometimes. Sonia cuddles Art and agrees, adding that as long as they're all together, Art has nothing to fear. The man lifts his finger and, smiling, tells the kids not to worry. If the monster appears, he'll handle it. Archie nods in agreement. The girl smiles and says her brother will keep them safe, but her father, looking upset, tells her that it's his job to protect her. Lucat points to the bottle on the table and asks his dad if it's alcohol. Edward nods and explains that it's made from a special magic herb, which makes it taste really unusual. The four of them sit together at the table. Luca asks once more about the special taste. His father explains that it's hard to describe, but any food with mana has that unique flavor. The wolf they had just eaten tasted magical, too. This unusual-looking wolf turned out to be fried meat. The boy watches his father slowly pour alcohol into a glass. Edward says it feels great, so he takes a small sip and enjoys the moment. The main character realizes they only drink a little to enjoy the flavor. He remembers seeing similar tasting sets back when he was in Japan. Suddenly, a bottle and a few small glasses crash onto the table, making a loud noise. Everyone jumps in surprise, except for the main character, who hasn't even noticed. All four stare in shock at the mysterious objects that suddenly appeared. Luca, now wide-eyed, asks, "What are those?" He's surprised to see a glass bottle, and piles of things appear on the table right after he thinks about them. Edward regains his composure and asks what the item is for. The main character explains that people use it to drink alcohol. The man smiles at the boy and explains that because the things were created by magic, they won't last long. He promises to use them and thanks the boy for helping Sonia. The boy's mother tells him he did something wonderful. The main character ignores what others are saying. He's too surprised, just thinking about how he managed to pull it off. He pictured a glass bottle with piles stacked inside, but the image popped into his mind for just a moment. Luke starts to wonder, maybe what the priest meant by developing skills is actually learning how to turn dreams into reality. The guy wonders why this is happening now. Maybe it's because the picture seems familiar, but then he realizes it doesn't actually look familiar at all. Suddenly, he starts feeling dizzy. Everyone stays seated at the table. Ars asks, "Where's my share?" The others turn to her, surprised by her question. The crying girl points to herself and asks, "Where is my stack? Why isn't there anyone here for me?" Edward and Sonia look at Luke. Luke, the main character, holds his head in fear. He realizes exactly what's happening. He keeps holding his head. Luca wants to make another one for Arch, but he has no clue how he managed it the first time. The girl, with tears in her eyes, looks at her brother and asks again where her stack is. The boy gently tells her not to cry and promises to find another solution. The main character holds out his hands, and suddenly a glowing ball appears between them. Everyone watches in amazement. His father smiles and asks if Luca is already using mana. Sonia looks at the boy in surprise, amazed that he can do this. The mother understands that it was Luke who made the noise in the church by throwing a stone. Suddenly, a shiny, smooth ball appears. Everyone smiles when they see the ball. The boy says he thinks it turned out great and asks our chef if it will work. The girl happily reaches out for the glowing ball, calling it a beautiful stone and thanking her brother. Suddenly, a beam of light shines down onto the table. In the center of it, a man with pointed ears appears, kneeling. He picks up the stone, smiling as he examines it. Everyone else stares at him in shock. Suddenly, a man shows up, checks out the ball, and smiles, saying it looks fantastic. The boy stares at her in shock, while his parents glare at him with anger. Luca just can't figure out how she showed up out of nowhere. Sonia quickly grabs Archie, making her chair tip over. Edward clenches his fist and, with a mean look, demands to know who Archie is. Archie starts crying and reaches out, upset because her stone was taken away. It's nighttime. A girl in a dress stands by a big tree with lots of leaves. She lifts her head and asks the sacred Siritree why it called her so late at night. The girl feels a sudden rush of happiness. She is curious and wants to understand what is happening. Suddenly, a bright pillar of light appears in front of her, and the same mysterious person who visited Luke's house before steps out. The girl looks at him, puzzled and curious. She's amazed by how she looks and can't believe how powerful this magic is. When she sees the new girl, she first thinks she might be an elf, but then quickly realizes she's not. The girl realizes he's a high elf. He lifts his hand, gazes at the tree, and tells her it's a sacred tree. The girl in a dress bows to him and politely introduces herself as Eureka. She explains she's a half-elf and serves as a priestess of Sarah's sacred tree. The elf, looking a bit impatient, holds up his hand and asks her to skip the formalities. He looks at Ulrika and says that Sierra is a lovely name, but the true name of the tree can't be spoken because it's tied to its life energy. As a priestess, it's her job to protect this secret. Ulrika nods in agreement with the elf, but then asks why he's here in the first place. The elf quietly says the name Alia. Ulrika looks at him, confused and waiting for an explanation. The elf smiles at Ulrika and says she can just call him Alia, joking that if he shared his full name, they'd be here all night. Ulrika laughs and asks what brings him here. Alia stands in front of the girl and says he wants to see what she just got. The girl asks him to repeat what he said. The elf tells Ulrika he's sorry. He explains that elves experience time differently, so what feels like a few days to her seems much shorter to him. He also mentions that this situation just keeps coming back around, like a circle. The girl tries to figure out what Alia is talking about. She's pretty sure it's the strange stone the main character magically created. Ulrika tells him she's sorry, but she already gave the stone to the village chief. Everything made in this village is handed over to the Margrave. Alia says that's unfortunate. Ulrika asks the elf if this stone has any special powers. Alia raises a finger, ready to explain its secret. Alia smiles and admits the stone is actually empty. Ulrika is surprised and suddenly understands everything. The elf grins and says the only real magic here belongs to the person who made the stone. Ulrika glances at the elf, surprised, and wonders what he meant when he said someone created him. Alia places her finger on his temple and says she senses something. Suddenly, a beam of light shines down on him, and he vanishes. Ulrika touches the sire tree, asking for guidance to find Miss Relia. She wonders where he might be. With her eyes closed and her hand on her head, Ulrika senses his presence and knows she has discovered his location. She notices a house ahead and realizes it belongs to Luke. Behind the house are some hills and trees, while a tree with a roof over it stands in front. The girl escapes and tells the tree that she's leaving. Ulrika hopes the elf won't make any trouble there. Sonia is clutching Archie, who's crying in fear, while Edward points his sword at the elf holding the stone. The table is a mess, with everything scattered everywhere. The cunning Edward asks Alia if he is really an elf and wonders what he wants here. He says he'll do anything to protect his family. Edward realizes that he didn't even notice Alia moving. Maybe it's some kind of magic. Alia smiles, holding up a stone, and says she came here because she was following the trail left by this very stone. Crying, Archie waves her hands and insists the stone belongs to her because her brother made it for her. Their mother tries to calm Archie down. Luca tells everyone the stone should go back to his sister. Alia looks at him, confused, and Edward is caught off guard. The main character stares seriously at the elf, who gives him a sly, knowing smile. That's when the hero realizes the elf is definitely looking right at him. Alia walks over to the boy, gently holds his head, and asks if he created this stone. Edward charges forward with his sword, shouting at the elf to let go of his son, or else he can't guarantee what he'll do. The elf quickly knocks the sword away with his bare hand. Alia raises his hand to show he means no harm as the tip of a broken sword whizzes past him. He quickly says sorry for startling everyone. Edward stands shocked, holding his broken sword as he stares at the elf. In her mind, Alia warns him not to upset the half-elves. They're much stronger than them. The elf gives the man a serious look. It's best not to upset the elves, because if you do, the entire land could be destroyed and no one would make it out alive. The main character, looking annoyed, tells the elf his name is Luca. He asks the elf for his name and wants to know if he really is an elf, just like Dad said. Edward is surprised by his son's reaction. Alia stands in front of the boy with a friendly smile and tells him that yes, she really is an elf, and he can call her Alia. Luca grins and says he has another question. Luca wants to know why Alia showed up and frightened his family. Alia is surprised by his question, while Luca's family watches nervously. The boy tells the elf that he made his sister cry. Arch looks at his brother and starts to tear up. The main character tells the elf that now he's upset him too. The elf stares back at him with a serious look. Alia gave a small bow to Fate and apologized. She was just so curious that she hurried over without really thinking it through. The elf hands Archie the stone ball and tells her it belongs to her. Archie smiles, takes the ball, and thanks the elf happily. Alia smiles and says he didn't mean to frighten anyone. He asks if they could help him and wants to know how people show they are sorry. Luca and his father look at him thoughtfully. Uraka is hurrying to Luke's house, out of breath and already exhausted. She rushes over to Mr. Alia for help. Ulrika walks into the house and is surprised to see Alia kneeling, begging the family to forgive him. Luke points out that Alia's actions show he's truly sorry. Edward turns to Ulrika and calls her his sister. Edward points to the bent elf and asks Ulrika if she knows him, which makes her look surprised. Archie just smiles and tosses a stone in his hand. Ulrika, looking very serious, tells everyone that even the king must show respect to this elf. She explains that he is a high elf, and this news surprises everyone. Edward, Sanya, and Ulrika kneel beside Aaliyah, feeling sorry for upsetting him. They sincerely apologize, saying they never meant to make him mad, but the elf gently tells them to stop, insisting that he should be the one to apologize. Ars and Lucas watch the scene, completely surprised. Luke stares at the high elf, surprised to learn his true identity. He never even knew his own sister was a half-elf. Everyone sat down at the table. Lyrica quietly apologized to the boy, keeping her eyes shut so she wouldn't frighten the villagers. She hadn't told anyone before. Ilya explained that people often spread rumors about elves, making others fear them, even though elves rarely get upset or angry. Ulricha looks at the main character with a hint of sadness and asks if he's scared of her. Luke quickly shakes his head and says he's not afraid at all. He glances at the high elf, who's sipping from a mug, and says Alia isn't scary at all, they just needed to have a conversation. Alia smiles warmly. The high elf reaches out his hand to the boy, smiling warmly, and says he'd like to be friends. Everyone around is shocked by this unexpected moment. Archie smiles while holding a stone. Alia comments that his magic crystal is incredible, but Luke insists it's nothing special, just a regular stone. Alia looks at the boy and asks what he means, saying just because he has no powers doesn't mean he's not important. She says she thinks this is actually something special. Luca turns to him with a surprised and curious expression. The elf suddenly stands up, surprising everyone. He gets really excited and starts talking nonstop about the magic crystal. Alia stretches out her hands and keeps telling her long story about the crystal. Everyone stares at her in surprise, and Luca asks her to make it quick. The elf says he'll show them how it all works. Light starts to glow in Ali's hands, and then, right in front of him, a sword appears. Blushing, Alia shyly shows off the wooden sword she just made and explains that it used up a lot of her magic energy. The elf starts to lose his temper and lifts his sword, explaining that making objects is actually one of the hardest things to do with creation magic. Ulricha quickly tells him to stop. Alia gives the girl a sharp look and asks what she wants since he's only just begun. Meanwhile, the family thanks him warmly for taking the time to explain everything so clearly. But not everyone knows enough to really understand what the elf is talking about. Most people are amazed by how much the elf knows and shares with them. The elf laughs and points out how much excitement there is. He says he'll just explain everything one more time. Alia, a bit embarrassed, rubs her head and hands the sword to Edward as a way to say sorry for disturbing them. Edward takes the sword and thanks her. Edward looks at the smiling elf and says he knows the elf is curious about the power of the bow and promises to speak with the village chief to try and buy it from him. Meanwhile, Edward's mother tells Luke things would have been simpler if he had just been honest at church, and Luke apologizes for not telling the truth. Alia, smiling brightly, excitedly asks her father if it's really true. He happily nods and thanks them warmly. The main character smiles at the elf, surprised that anyone was ever scared of him. It's still dark outside, and Edward mentions that it's getting late, so they should head out. Ulrika agrees with him. Coachman guides a carriage pulled by two horses. Behind them, green hills and trees roll by. Inside the carriage, an elderly man fixes his tie. Next to him, a woman with glasses sits quietly. The man comments that the Viscount's son's funeral was well managed. The woman nods and respectfully calls him master. A woman with a serious expression fixes her glasses and admits she's still not completely sure the Viscount's family had anything to do with what happened to Edward. She simply won't allow her beloved grandchildren to be trapped by a deadly agreement. The man insists that this is how noble traditions work. She gets his point, but deep down, she can't accept it. The man believes it's her half-elf nature, making her so stubborn. Caroline is a half-elf woman who wears glasses. She works as the head maid in the man's house and takes care of many important tasks. She's also the sister of Ulrika, who is the priestess in the village of Tram. She is both his mother-in-law and Edward's grandmother. Their family relationship is pretty complex. The family tree. Christopher explains that his wife is Caroline's daughter from her first marriage, and Edward is their child. Now, Caroline is married to the chief of the village of Tram. Now she's decided to act like she's his wife, which means she's also pretending to be Luke and Archie's grandmother. Caroline lets everyone know they've arrived, and Christopher tells the coachman to stop the carriage here. Christopher and Caroline get out of the carriage and enjoy the fresh air. Christopher is curious and asks how many people are here. The woman tells him there are around 200. The man quietly notes there are more enemies than he thought. A large group of armed men is heading their way. One of them, a man with a beard wearing a Viking helmet and holding a sword, tells his group to deal with the old man first. He says they'll come back for the woman and the money later. Christopher says they knew those people were nobles when they attacked them. He can't tell if that was brave or just plain foolish. Caroline thinks it's probably just foolish. The horde leader says he doesn't care who they are. He raises his sword, points at them, and shouts for his group to attack. Christopher tells them they're about to find out why they became nobles. He holds out his hand, and suddenly a magical flash appears. A sudden flash strikes the leader of the group, knocking him backward and making him drop his sword. Lying on the ground and coughing, he looks up and asks if someone just used magic. Christopher stands there, amazed that he's still alive, and tells the man to lift his head. The man, still on his hands and knees, says that not even magic could take out 200 people at once. Christopher points and tells him to look behind him. Behind him, all his men are already down, defeated by Christopher's magic. In shock, the man asks, "What is this?" Christopher tells him that it's all just magic. He can't move, so he keeps looking at the people who have died. Carolina adjusts her glasses and, with a serious look, says that getting hit like this is like slamming into solid rock. It's more than enough to knock most people out. The man drops to the ground, laughing nervously. Caroline explains that aristocrats don't rule with power alone, they have magic on their side. Christopher adds that their magic is so strong, it could wipe out an entire army. Christopher, looking upset, says that aristocrats are just like monsters when it comes to protecting what they own. The carriage is leaving. Christopher says he believed the Viscount sent them, but there's more to the story. They made this decision because of the monster that appeared from the enchanted forest. Christopher and Caroline sit facing each other. Caroline explains that many refugees were forced to leave their homes because of terrifying monsters. Christopher adds that he first heard about these monsters 10 years ago, right when the dispute with the Viscount started. He tells the woman that, based on the way he's headed, he must be going toward the village of Trame. Then he asks her, if there's no reward out for him, why hasn't anyone tried to kill him yet? Caroline pushes her glasses up and explains that they searched for him, but this creature is smart, hides well, and picks things up fast. Catching him is a real challenge. Christopher asks Caroline if she's found a priestess for the World Tree yet. She says no, because elves and half-elves just aren't strong enough for such an important job. She explains that only a high elf is right for this role, since the high elves were the ones who created the World Tree in the first place. Christopher wonders how this tree is different from other holy trees. He explains that the World Tree can only unlock its true magic if there is a priestess present. No wonder they're always struggling with monsters. Caroline adds that neither half-elves nor regular elves can help. Only a high elf has any real power, and without one, they're helpless. The horses keep pulling the carriage along. Christopher says maybe someone with special abilities will show up to help. Caroline is surprised and tells him that sounds ridiculous. Christopher replies that anything can happen. Luca made a special stone. While Luca and Ars are taking a bath together, Ars notices how beautifully it shines. The stone is filled with magical energy from water, fire, air, and earth. When you add specific mana, the ball changes color. Water turns it blue, fire makes it red, air changes it to yellow, and earth turns it brown. Archie is pleased, but Luca stands with his hand raised. Suddenly, the main character feels a sharp pain in his chest and clutches it, letting out a deep sigh. Archie notices and looks at him with concern. Recently, Luke has been feeling pain in his chest and isn't sure if it's just something physical, but after using magic, he realized his spells are working better than before. With tears in her eyes, Archie begs her brother not to fall ill, saying she doesn't want him to. Luca just smiles warmly back at her. Luca reassures Archie that as long as she keeps smiling, he'll always feel great. Archie notices the stone glowing brightly after Luca picks it up. Luca promises her that he will do whatever it takes to keep her happy. Luca starts to tell Archie that he's actually her older brother, but before he can finish, he stops talking. Archie just looks at him, puzzled. The main character turns to his sister and asks if she just heard that strange voice. Archie shakes her head and says she didn't hear anything. She never said it out loud, but if Luca ever ignored her, she would feel heartbroken and cry for hours. Now, Luca hears that voice again, and somehow, it fills his mind with old memories. Archie looks at his brother, surprised, and asks what kind of voice that was. Luca says it sounded strange. Their mother tells them to hurry up and come out right away. A thick black liquid is floating in the empty space. It came from a ball of magic energy. Now, that ball is resting on the ground beside the wheel. The liquid has chosen a host and entered it. The new leader of the Viscounts argues with the Margrave, making strong demands. He points sharply with his finger, gripping a dagger in his other hand, clearly angry. He accepted these rules just because he respected the aristocrats' laws, but there's nothing stopping him from ruining their family later on. Someone says sorry to their son, knowing it's the only way to keep going. The voice wonders why he's suffering for something he didn't cause, pointing out that it's the woman and the man who are actually at fault. The cloth slowly started to look more and more human. It kept showing sad memories to the person wearing it, feeding on their pain. As the cloth soaked up this dark energy, it grew stronger and turned into a dangerous monster. Eventually, it was even able to form its own hand. He's taken on a human shape and looks around at the hills and trees, saying the people who tried to hurt him will have to face the consequences. In a village surrounded by hills and forests, Lucas announces he can now make two dolls that move on their own. One doll holds a stone, while the other uses a hoe to strike the ground. Standing before them is a thoughtful main character who wishes he could train more often. The boy remembers his father's advice, not to make too many clay dolls because it can upset people. Looking at the hoe, Luke suddenly understands why. The main character thinks about his magic ball and wants to use mana in the same way through his hoe. He grips the hoe and tries to channel his mana into it, hoping to make it stronger. The boy swings his hoe against the ground, but it breaks. He stares at it, disappointed. Luca thought using mana on objects would be simple, but it's not. Controlling mana feels like getting lost in a tricky maze. That's what his father said. It seems like the material is changing, too. The boy remembers watching his father with Ars, practicing his sword moves. They both thought Mr. Ilya's sword was incredible. It could even slice through magic. Luca notices a group of guys approaching and waving at him. One of them asks Luca why he's there. One of the boys tells Luca that starting today, he's now part of the processing team too. The man wearing the hat says he was really surprised when he found out that Luca was the one who made that stone. The guy looks at them, unsure of what to say and feeling awkward. His dad encourages him to greet Adam and Jonathan. Luca says hello to the boy named Aiden and also to the man in the hat, Jonathan. The main character stares at them in shock. He realizes they're just regular people. Jonathan explains that the magic herb absorbs mana, so if Aiden isn't careful, it could drain all his energy. Aiden asks if Jonathan is being serious. The boy holds his head and thinks he should have said he was happy to meet them. His father watches him. Edward worries that he could be abandoned, so he feels it would be safer if someone from his family always kept an eye on him. Edward gently pats his son on the head, making him smile, and reminds him not to push himself too hard. Luca nods and assures his dad that everything will be all right. Luca picks up a stone and thinks about how he can cover it with mana. However, he quickly realizes that pushing mana inside the stone is much harder than just coating it on the outside. You see glowing patterns on the stone. If you send mana through the right lines, you can make the item much stronger. The boy continues to stare at the stone. It seemed to him that it was similar in principle to amplification. He says that he knows his body well, so there is no need to look for a way. He sees the stone start to crack and realizes he used too much magic power. Bright magical energy starts seeping out from the cracks in the stone, quickly overflowing. The main character suddenly understands that he's about to burst. The boy keeps holding the stone in one hand while making a fist with the other. He powers up even more by covering his arm in mana. Luca waves his hand, creating ripples in the air. He's using wind magic to block out any sound. Water starts swirling around the stone, which the main character had carefully covered to keep any pieces from flying away. Suddenly, the stone bursts apart, sending tiny pieces flying everywhere. The tense main character squints, closing one eye as they watch what just happened. The boy puts his hand out in front of him, lets out a sigh, and admits he was frightened. Now, the swirling wind around him has calmed down. Only a few tiny pieces of the stone remained on Luke's damp hand. He tells himself he needs to be more cautious when using mana. Suddenly, the boy feels a sharp pain in his chest. Fear flashes in his eyes as he quickly grabs his chest with both hands. Clenching his teeth, the main character struggles to fight through the pain, but it's too much. He can't hold on and starts to collapse. As the main character starts to fall and screams out, someone suddenly catches him from behind, holding him by both hands and stopping his fall. Luke thanks his rescuer and quickly turns to see who it is. He's surprised by what he sees. He looks at his two clay dolls as they help him stand up. The boy is confused, wondering how they knew to save him when he never told them what to do. The dolls are standing in front of him. Luca holds up two fingers for them to see. The boy suddenly realizes he forgot to give them instructions. The dolls lifted their arms and started swaying gently. As usual, they followed Luke's every command. The main character looks at them. Lately, he's been controlling them with his mind, so he might not even realize he told them to catch him. Still sitting on the grass, Luca gazes ahead and spots some familiar figures. As he looks closer, he realizes it's his father Tostin, his mother, and Archie. They are all staring at him, looking surprised. For some reason, Ars is crying. The boy notices her sad face and wonders what's wrong. In his mind, he comforts her, thinking that everything will be okay because their big brother is on his way. Suddenly, Luca stops talking. clutching his chest as sharp pain hits him again. He's struggling to breathe and feels scared and confused, as if something is seriously wrong inside his body. Luca hears a mysterious voice in his head begging him to stay. It feels like someone is trying to control him. He shuts his eyes tightly, feeling the pain. Concerned father rushes over, gently grabbing his son's shoulder and asking if something is wrong and if he's okay. Even though he's in pain, Arcee tries to reassure his dad, saying he's all right and just feeling a bit tired. Suddenly, his little sister runs up to him, crying and begs Luke not to lie. Luke is caught off guard by this. She gently tells him that she just wants her brother to be safe. She doesn't want anything bad to happen to him or for him to get sick. Sonia explains that Arcee was planning to see her brother, but while they were walking together, Arcee suddenly began to cry. Edward guesses that Arcee realized her brother was sick. The boy tries to comfort his sister, telling her that everything will be okay. The girl lets out a quiet sob. Edward tells his son to take a break, saying there's not much work left to do. Luca looks at his dad, surprised, and asks why they're stopping so soon. Tostin lets them know that Mr. Callisto, the Margrave's representative, is here. Luca wonders if Grandpa has come too, and Arce gets excited at the thought. A few more people come over, and one of them asks if Callisto is really here. Edward says yes. The man wants to know why Callisto showed up sooner than expected and if something happened. Edward, looking serious, explains that magical creatures are moving because of the monster's actions. It seems they're all heading straight for the village. Luke's father stands before a crowd and announces that they've spotted nearly 100 wolf-like animals. The people react with surprise and start asking him questions. They chat among themselves. One compares them to a forest wolf, while another complains there are just too many of these creatures. Meanwhile, the main character stands silently by his mother and sister, looking serious. He can't stop thinking about magical beasts. Edward reassures everyone that things will be okay. He explains that with Mr. Callisto here, they will work together to solve the case, but right now, they all need to stay calm and not panic. Archie gives Luca a warm hug and promises to always look out for him. Luca is grateful, but feels like he should have made that promise first. The sun rises behind the mountains, filling the sky with light. Christopher and Caroline step out of the carriage. Christopher says the trip went smoothly. He suggests they act like an elderly couple. Caroline asks him to show her how to do it. He smiles at her and jokes that he should probably apologize to her real husband. Caroline tells him not to worry. They have everything sorted out between them. She then reminds him to go and change his clothes. Caroline pretends to be a grandmother, while Christopher acts like an old man with a cane. A woman nearby is holding a suitcase. Christopher tells Luca and Arce to hold on for a moment, then bursts out laughing. There's a tall tower with a bell at the top. Christopher admits he finds it hard to act like an ordinary person. Caroline smiles and tells him it actually suits him well. In the forest, you can spot several wolves with bright white eyes and huge, drooling mouths. Strange horns grow from their heads. You can spot houses far away. Someone mentions there's a village up ahead and warns that magical beasts have been stirred up. One of them sticks out its tongue and claims it can help. The long-haired creature laughs and agrees. He stands beside the wolves, and you can see a strange liquid dripping from his hand. Christopher and Caroline knock on Luke's door. Christopher lets Luke and Archie know their grandfather is here. Caroline asks them how they're feeling. Luca welcomes Grandma and Grandpa. Edward smiles and waves at them, while Archie is excited to see them. Christopher, also known as Callisto, has arrived as the Margrave's representative. Luca notices that his father shares a strong resemblance with him. Callisto asks if they recognize who he is. Luca glances at Caroline and can hardly believe she's a grandmother. She actually looks more like someone's sister from church. Smiling, Caroline tells the kids how much they've grown. The main character points to his grandmother and asks why her ears are so long. He wonders if she might be an elf. Edward and Sonia are surprised and stare at her. Callisto realizes they never told them the truth. Caroline explains that she is a half-elf, and that means they also have some elf blood in them. Edward and Sonia quietly exchange glances. Archie points to herself and asks if she's an elf. Luca laughs and says, well, maybe just a little. In his mind, Edward realizes she's really their great-grandmother, but the part about her having elven blood is actually true, which even surprised him at first. He starts seeing his family bloodline in his thoughts. Luca's father smiles and guesses that Carolina and Callisto must be tired and hungry after their long walk. He offers them some food. Callisto laughs and agrees, saying he's starving. The table is set with several dishes and candles. Everyone sat together at the table and began their meal. Callisto gently patted the main character's head, while Caroline glanced over at RJ. There's a bottle of alcohol on the table. Callisto takes a sip, smiles, and says it tastes great. Edward explains that it's a fresh batch, so the magical energy is still in the drink. Callisto says it was worth coming all this way just for that. Grandpa looks at the stack and asks where they found such a beautiful glass. He says it must have been made by a real master. Edward tells Callisto that Luca created them. The grandfather, surprised, turns to look at his grandson. Luke's father explains that Luke accidentally made them using magic. Callisto, his father, scolds him, saying that making glass with magic is way more difficult than simply starting a fire. The main character looks at them, surprised. Grandpa explains that even the simplest things take a lot of hard work to make, and Edward finally understands and agrees. Suddenly, the boy hears a voice in his head, saying he almost didn't get this for his birthday. He's really surprised. He's curious about where that voice is coming from again. Suddenly, Callisto interrupts him, asking how he created the stack. Callisto says he can't sense any magic from these stacks and wonders if they're really magical at all. All eyes are on Luke and his grandfather. Luke confesses he doesn't really understand what happened. He was just thinking about a stack for his dad, and then, out of nowhere, it showed up. Callisto asks his grandson if he can do the same thing. Grandpa then magically creates a small ball of water with his finger. Luca recognizes it as a simple magic trick and says he can do it too. He copies his grandpa and makes an identical water ball. Grandpa looks at the boy, surprised at how effortlessly he does it. There's not even the slightest mistake. Callisto tells the boy that he's had enough and drops a water ball onto the pile. Luca nods in agreement, but then pops the balloon himself. The main character barely lets go of his hand when Callisto suddenly jumps up from the table, and together with Caroline, they both turn to look at Luca in shock. Caroline wants to know how he did it, but her grandfather interrupts, wondering where the real water, made by the magic of everyday life, suddenly went. The main character looks at them, confused about why everyone seems so surprised. Still, he smiles and says yes. Edward and Sonia glance at Callisto and Caroline, while Fright watches quietly, eating and clearly not understanding what's going on. Carolina smiles proudly at her grandson, tells him he's truly talented, pats Callisto on the head, and introduces her as her granddaughter. Edward turns to his wife and says that even Mr. Alia saw how talented Luke is, and Sonia nods in agreement. Callisto wants to know who Mr. Alia is. Edward explains that he's a high elf who recently broke into their home. Hearing this, Callisto immediately gets the picture. After staying calm, he and Caroline are both surprised and ask once more about the high elf. Caroline turns to Edward and asks if what she heard is really true. Grandpa wants to know if the high elf has arrived. Edward tries to keep everyone calm, but Callisto, clearly upset, tells Tom not to let Edward calm him down. Luke's dad tells them that Ulrich's sister said Mr. Alea is having an elven dream, so now they can't even talk to him. Luke asks his grandfather what an elven dream is. His grandfather explains that it's a special state when elves match their own magical energy with the energy of the world around them. Sitting beside Archie, Caroline explains that elves can go without food and water for years, or even decades while they sleep, and when it comes to high elves, their sleep can last even longer. Everyone stood up from the table. Edward raised his finger and said he'd probably wake up in a month, right when Callisto first comes to the village. Callisto asked him how he knew that. Edward recalls the ball that Luca made. He explains that, by the rules, it should be given to the Margrave. So, they plan to talk with Callisto in a month to see if it's possible to give the ball to Mr. Alia instead. Luca glances at his father, puzzled, and asks if Alia is planning to sleep until the big day. He just can't figure out the high elves. His father shrugs and jokes that maybe waiting for a whole month was too much for her, so she simply chose to sleep through it. It's getting dark outside. Grandpa thinks it's too late now and suggests visiting him tomorrow instead. Edward smiles and jokes that there's no way he'll be able to wake up Alia. Callisto gives his son a sharp look and reminds him that even saying hello matters. He asks if Edward remembers all the stories people tell about elves. Edward thinks it over. Carolyn, looking serious, warns that you shouldn't upset the half-elves. She says humans are not their equals, and if you make the elves angry, the entire country could be destroyed. Caroline and Callisto stare at the happy family, clearly surprised. Edward says the moment seems familiar, but reassures Mr. Alia that everything will be fine. Luke comments that the high elf acts a bit odd, but means well. Grandpa wonders aloud why they're all acting so strange. His expression turns serious, and he reminds everyone that manners are important, no matter what. Callisto thinks to himself that there's always a reason behind every rumor. There's always a reason behind every rumor, even if someone seems friendly. Imagine a mysterious figure in a long coat standing quietly by a big old tree. People say you should never make the high elves mad, or it could be the end for everyone. In the trees, a cheerful girl is hiding, talking playfully about her bow and an arrow. Callisto joined forces with the villagers to help protect their home from monsters. Together, they built tall wooden towers, each with a lookout standing on top. Some people stack stones to build a wall. They also put stakes in the ground for extra protection, just in case someone tries to break through. They can slow them down. Callisto gives a serious order to his son and the man with the hammer. The main character points at the wooden screen where the animation is playing. Archie and a girl are watching with interest. Meanwhile, Luca entertains himself with magic, making the girls smile with delight. Luca often helped with chores at home. He stands in front of his mom, who's holding a basket. Archie is carrying a chair, and the girl is busy hanging up the laundry. Luca himself is bringing a basket full of carrots. Most days were calm and uneventful for them. In the center of the village, there's a church. Suddenly, a loud noise echoes throughout the whole village. Everything was calm until a warning echoed through the air. The man in the tower struck a hammer against metal, sending out a loud alarm that a magical beast was coming. Callisto, Edward, and another man are standing in front of a big crowd. Edward steps forward and tells everyone to please stay calm. Everyone's face turns serious and worried. Edward warns that magical beasts are extremely dangerous. If they come into the village, many people could get hurt. Archon, Luca, and their mother stand together, knowing Edward has already tried to protect them. Edward clenches his fist and tells everyone that this isn't the end. This time, Callisto is on their side, a truly incredible magician sent by the Margrave himself. Edward reassures everyone that they have nothing to fear from the animals. Edward stands tall, holding his sword high. He tells everyone to trust him, because this is where he belongs. The sword lights up with a fiery glow and grows to an enormous size. Then, Luke's father promises everyone that he will defend the village. Everyone starts cheering and feels full of excitement. They shout out Edward and Callisto's names. Edward tells the crowd that if anyone gets injured, they should go straight to the Holy Father and Sister, who can heal them. The Holy Father and Sister are standing right there with everyone else. Edward walks up to his family with a big smile, raising his hands in excitement. He asks Archie if he thinks he's cool. Archie grins and replies, "You're cool, and so is your sword." Callisto notices his son's sword and is amazed, asking how he got a weapon filled with mana. Edward laughs, admitting he was surprised too, and explains that Mr. Aaliyah crafted the sword for him. Callisto was shocked and said it couldn't be true. She asked if the High Elf had really made this sword himself. Edward smiles and says he can hardly believe it, but now even someone like him can stand up to a magician. His family watches him proudly. Grandfather gestures towards the sword and says he isn't talking about that, since there's no way a high elf could make and gift a sword. Edward insists that he really did, but Callisto disagrees and starts an argument. Callisto comes up to Edward and in a serious tone warns him not to let anyone see this sword. Edward, clearly scared, quickly agrees. Callisto asks Edward and Luca to join him, and both the boy and his father agree, while the mother looks on in surprise. Feeling scared, she asks Edward if Luca will join them. Ars puts his hands up and says that Grandpa seems frightening. Grandpa tells Sonia that Luca is coming with him. Edward promises they'll just help from a distance with arrows and asks his wife not to worry. Luca happily greets everyone, but his mom protests because he's only 10. The main character stands in front of his mom, who is holding little Archie. He tells her he wants to leave, but smiles and says he wants to protect the village, his mother, and Archie. After he spoke, his little sister and mom felt calmer and smiled at him. Luca promises he'll stay out of trouble, and both his mother and Archie believe him. Edward glances over at Callisto. People stand behind wooden barricades, ready to defend themselves. One person holds a sword, another has a bow. Luca sets a pile of arrows on the ground and says he brought extra. Jonathan takes a closer look at the arrows. He says he won't get into trouble, but you can tell he's uneasy. Luca notices and asks him what's on his mind. Jonathan picks up a bundle of arrows and says, "There are a lot here, but it still won't be enough for everyone." Luca looks at Jonathan, smiles, and reassures him, saying there's no reason to worry. These arrows are meant only for them. The main character suddenly runs off, claiming he's going to make arrows for everyone. Jonathan watches him go, looking confused. Jonathan asks the boy if he still has enough mana. Luca finds this a bit odd, since the boy can easily gather mana from his surroundings instead of using up his own energy. Maybe everyone is just extra worried because he's still a child. Roger stands facing Edward and Callisto. His grandfather praises him, saying the scouting group did well. Edward then asks Roger if anything has changed. Roger tells them that the magical beasts have gathered at the edge of the forest, and now more creatures have joined them. Callisto and Edward are both shocked by this news. Two magical creatures are standing side by side. Edward is curious and asks why they're together, since they usually compete for territory and don't get along. Edward looks at Callisto and asks for his thoughts. Grandpa suggests that maybe someone else is in control. A shadowy figure stands on a hill surrounded by trees, quietly watching something in the distance. Suddenly, it lifts its hand into the air. The guard on the tower looks ahead nervously and warns everyone that the animals are starting to move. People below watch him anxiously. Edward looks at Callisto, who lets him know he heard the whole conversation. Roger stands quietly behind me. Callisto says it's time to move on. Roger stands before a group of people, each holding a bow. They are getting ready to defend themselves from dangerous magical creatures. Edward warns everyone to keep shooting at the animals without stopping, just focus on hitting them, and he and Callisto will take care of finishing them off. The magical beasts charged ahead, coming fast. Roger and the other archers got ready to fire their arrows at them. Edward raises his sword and commands his men to fire. The soldiers shoot a flurry of arrows at the beasts, and several arrows find their mark. Several arrows are already lodged in the beasts, but they keep pushing forward. Up above, a dark figure stands silhouetted against the sky. The creature on the rock just stands there, not joining the fight. It seems like no one has even noticed it yet. It mocks the crowd, calling them fools, and laughs loudly. Callisto and Edward are waiting, watching the enemy, but haven't attacked yet. Suddenly, Edward's expression grows serious. He sees something unusual where the creature was standing, but now it's gone. Callisto turns to him and asks what's wrong. No one is around among the grass and trees. Edward wonders if he just imagined everything. Callisto watches him, and he simply says that nothing's wrong. The black liquid starts to flow through the grass on the ground. This is the same creature that was standing on the rock before it vanished. It keeps moving through the grass, making a little mouse run off in fear. Suddenly, the liquid spots a man standing on a hill and becomes interested in him. The main character stands on the hill, clenching his fists and silently cheering for his father and grandfather. The creature is confused, wondering who this strange person is and why he's there. The boy looks ahead, noticing that the creature doesn't see him. The creature just laughs and says it doesn't care, then keeps crawling toward the building. The liquid quietly moves by people who have no idea it's there. Suddenly, the creature becomes alert and focuses on something. Luke's mom is standing by the front door, holding Archie, and there's another girl standing beside her. She looks worriedly at Sonia, calls her aunt, and asks if things will turn out all right. Sonia reassures her, saying they're tough and will get through this. Ars nods in agreement. The black liquid suddenly stretches, forming a mouth, and it says that it remembers Sonia. The creature stares at Luke's mother and angrily says, "This is the woman who destroyed my life." Liquid says he can't forgive her. Suddenly, all three of them spot a strange creature, and fear appears on their faces. The creature transforms into a human shape and tells her that he's going to enjoy himself with her until she's completely destroyed. The creature calls out to Sonia and sticks out its tongue at her. Sonia screams and hugs her aunt tightly, while Archie covers her face, saying she's scared. Sonia stares at the creature in shock and says, "This can't be real." Luca turns to the side, his face suddenly surprised. He senses that something isn't right. He begins heading home, realizing he needs to be with his mom and sister. Suddenly, he clutches his chest in pain, coughing and dropping to his knees. Callisto and Edward quickly notice that something is wrong. Both of them stare at the main character, clearly scared. The father calls out the boy's name, while Callisto asks what's happening to him. The boy's cheeks turn red from the pain, and he's confused about why he feels this way. He pushes himself to keep going, knowing he needs to get to his mother and Archie as quickly as possible. Luke seems trapped, like something inside him is controlling his every move. Edward leans down to his son, who's in pain on the ground, and asks Callisto what's happening. Callisto is confused and trying to figure it out. With a wicked grin, Callisto realizes what's happening and quickly explains that nothing can be done. Contract magic is controlling the boy. Edward, worried, says that Luke is really sick. The boy closes his eyes, trying to sense his own mana, searching for the reason behind this odd feeling and trying to figure out who cast this spell. The main character is using his magic to drive him away. Bright flashes of light appear before his eyes. Someone tells Luca to get ready. As he hears the familiar voice and opens his eyes, he realizes where he is, but what matters most is that he can really sense the manner all around him now. Suddenly, the main character gets up quickly and starts running, realizing he has to leave right away. His grandfather and father watch him go and call out to him. Edward is surprised and asks Callisto how his son became so quick. Grandpa tells Tom to come with him, saying he can handle things here on his own. The boy keeps running so quickly that he leaves big rings of air behind him. Aiden, holding his sword on his shoulder, angrily points at Luke and demands to know what he's doing. Luke rushes by so fast that Aiden loses his balance and drops his sword. The main character hurries up the path toward his house. He notices a strange creature by the door, standing with his mother and two girls. The boy feels confused and doesn't know what to do next. Luca feels unsure about his place among the people he cares for. The creature gives Sonya a menacing stare. The main character jumps into the head of this creature with his foot. Sonya and the girls are surprised by this. The creature's head starts to change shape, and the main character is shocked to discover it's actually a slime. All three are excited to see Luke, grateful that he rescued them. The mother and the girl call him by his name, while Archie greets him like a brother, shouting with joy. The creature collapses, clutching its head, shocked that someone hit its face. Lucas steps forward, warning it to stay away from his mom and sister. The main character glances down and sees his shoes starting to dissolve where they touch the creature. One of his shoes slips off his foot. The creature smiles and gets to his feet, noticing that something is odd about this kid. He squints, trying to see the boy's face clearly, but he just can't make it out. The slime lets out a loud scream and charges at the main character. Scared, the boy quickly understands that he must not let it touch him. The creature reaches out and is about to grab the bow, but suddenly its father appears and with a swift motion, cuts off its hand. The main character feels grateful that his father rescued him. Sonya, Arch, and his niece are all glad to see Edward too. The creature moves in pain, and Edward suddenly knows it's him again. The creature speaks, refusing to forgive Edward, and calls him by his name. Edward stares back, understanding exactly who the creature is. Edward stands in front of his son and says the Viscount's son has been gone for a long time. The creature replies that he isn't dead, but Edward, the Margrave's son, is the one who will die. The boy looks at his father with a puzzled face. His father admits he doesn't understand either, but somehow, after death, he became a monster. Luke starts to realize that Edward is actually the Margrave's son. Edward gets furious and yells at the creature, saying he doesn't care if it's a monster or the Viscount's son. He won't let anyone hurt his family. The creature tells Edward to stay quiet and rushes at them. Edward holds his sword up, ready to defend himself. At the same time, Lucas starts using both hands to cast a spell, trying to shield his father. Suddenly, the creature swallows up several clay dolls made by the main character. Confused, the creature asks, "What is this?" He gets really upset and warns the dolls to stay away from him, claiming he's an aristocrat. Seeing his chance, Edward charges at him with a massive sword, ready to strike. He tells the creature that he lost his nobility the moment he turned into a monster. Edward swings his sword a few times, hitting the creature. Splashes fly everywhere, and dolls start dropping out of it. The creature's head goes flying as it yells out Edward's name. He just landed a powerful hit. Sonya turns and glares at Edward, clearly annoyed. Edward explains that he came here because of his contract. He's grateful for it because that's how he found his beloved family. Now, with the creature's head on the ground, Edward turns to look at his son. Sonya gives her husband a calm smile, while Archie happily says that his dad and brother are awesome. Then, Sonya and the girls walk over to join Edward and Luke. Lucas smiles, lost in thought. He knows things almost took a bad turn. He wonders why he was born into a family that remembers their past lives. He wishes he could remember too, but worries that if he does, he might feel less connected to his family. Suddenly, the main character hears a voice inside his head telling him that this soul will be replaced. The boy's eyes turn completely black. Luke raises his hand towards his mother and sisters, and suddenly sharp fragments appear in the air, ready to strike them. Edward stares at his son, completely shocked. Edward suddenly understands these are stone shells. He looks at his son in fear and nervously asks what he's doing. Sonya and Archie stare at Luca, surprised. Archie's expression shifts to sadness as she glances at her brother. Luca just looks back at them, his face completely blank. Suddenly, the main character is knocked to the ground by clay figures he had made earlier. Edward stares in disbelief, unable to understand how even his own magic failed to stop him. The boy on the ground starts breathing fast. He tightens his fist and tries to work out what just happened. The main character's eyes return to normal, and with tears in his eyes, he realizes he just tried to hurt Ars. Everyone is staring at him. Then, out of nowhere, someone remarks that despair tastes amazing. The creature's severed head says it can sense a strong power coming from the boy, but it just can't remember anything about him. Edward stands before the head, holding his sword. The head speaks, its voice unexpectedly female, saying the memory seems to be damaged from being brought back to life. Edward suddenly realizes he's alive, but feels frightened and confused by the talking head and its strange voice, trying to make sense of what's happening. The head tells them that the noble boy and the slime that ate him are both dead now. She's the only one left. Edward holds his sword to her head and demands to know who she is and what she did with the bow. The head repeats Luke's name, saying it really fits him, and then starts making strange, unclear noises. She glances at the boy trapped by the dolls and says she can't remember much, but she's sure he has something to do with Luke. The main character gets a terrible headache and grabs his head in pain. Suddenly, the severed head changes to look like a woman and tells the boy that she enjoys the way his emotions feel. Luca stares at her, scared and confused, trying to remember who she is. Suddenly, memories from a past life come back. He sees himself standing in front of a house with cars parked all around. He's holding a few boxes tied with ribbons, presents for his mom, dad, and sister. There are two boxes, one is large and the other is small. Three people share the same birthday, but for one of them, the celebration happened on a different date. The main character smiles and says his father has always wanted a set of sake. He's sure his father will love this gift. At this moment, Luca understands these are memories from his previous life. He happily comes home and tells his parents the good news, but then he notices some guests in the house and asks who they are. A girl with dark hair sits across the table from his parents. The main character figures out she must be their neighbor. She smiles at him and greets him warmly, calling him Rue. He angrily demands to know why she's in his house. The girl says his anger is really hurting her. Then, his mother mentions that he still goes to high school. The girl says she's heard a lot about him from his parents. His mom adds that he's still exactly the same as before. The girl's smile quickly fades. She raises her finger, telling the other person to be quiet, and this makes her mother tilt her head to the side. The main character is surprised and asks his parents what's going on, then accidentally drops all the boxes on the floor. He glances at his parents and asks the girl what's happening to them. They're sitting perfectly still, and their eyes are now completely white. The man shouts at her, demanding to know what she did to his friends. She calmly tells him not to worry, they're just knocked out, not hurt. The girl grins slyly, rests her chin on her hand, and tells the guy he should really ask her what she did to his sister. The man angrily runs up to her, shouting and demanding to know where Kiri is and what she did to her, but the girl just keeps smiling calmly. She points at the sofa, showing that's where she's lying. The guy turns and spots his sister's legs sticking out from behind the couch. Shiri is unconscious on the floor. The main character rushes over, kneels beside her, and gently urges her to wake up. The girl comes up behind him and points her hand at him. He stands up straight. She tells him that she used magic to make her fall asleep. The main character suddenly finds himself unable to move. He asks her what she means by magic and why she needs it from him. The girl smiles and licks her lips, explaining that she needs it for food because she's actually a demon. Demons don't eat regular food, they feed on human emotions like anger and love. The guy keeps talking about magic and demons, but points out that this isn't some kind of fairy tale. The girl nods and tells him that she's actually the only demon in this world. The girl leans in close to the guy, puts her arm around his shoulder, and smiles as she tells him she's a totally new person now. The guy looks nervous. There are a bunch of elves, each with their own unique height. Demons have the power to control minds, and the only ones who can truly stand up to them are the high elves. The demon asks the guy if he's heard about the special spell the demons created to fight these monsters. She then offers to explain how it works. She explains that it's a curse designed to destroy everyone he loves. She remembers a high elf who once admired humans and their inner strength, but in the end, his soul was marked by this very curse. The girl presents a scary demon with a frightening look on his face. He became known as the Demon King because he killed so many people. Demons started to circle around him, eager to feed on his suffering. She is the one who shows all their wicked faces. But the Demon King destroyed them all, calling them nothing but pests. Suddenly, a mysterious hand appears, reaching out to the demons and making them all afraid. Jiying, a demon girl, was able to return by collecting the power left behind by her defeated kin. The boy wants to know why his family was chosen. The demon smiles and says to the main character, "Nothing tastes better than pure despair." She turns to the boy's parents and explains that she chose them because they seemed like the most loving people around. The more you care, the more it hurts to lose. Then she glances at Chiri. The girl wonders if anything could be worse than being hurt by your own family. The guy looks confused and asks her to explain. She lifts her hand, and suddenly he can't control his own movements. His body starts moving on its own. She wonders what it feels like for someone who has lost everything after destroying their own family. Suddenly, the man grabs his sister by the throat and begins to choke her. He suddenly notices his hands moving by themselves and, frustrated, begs the girl to make it stop. The demon explains this is part of the curse. The more he loves, the stronger the urge to kill becomes. The main character shakes as he tries to fight off the urge to strangle his sister. The demon calls him a corrupted soul and urges him to destroy everyone he cares about. The man keeps fighting against the curse, but he's running out of strength. With tears in his eyes, he thinks of his sister and calls her precious in his mind. Suddenly, a loud scream comes from the guy's house. Meanwhile, a girl standing with her back to him tells him, "You look amazing." She says that even someone with no power was able to stand up to the curse. She thinks that's really touching. The girl mentions that he's trying to fight back. The main character managed to get close and strike her, but she didn't react at all. The guy keeps his fist where he struck the demon, and she tells him he possesses the power of the holy sword. The main character storms in, furious. The demon admits she has no idea what's happening. Black tears drip from the girl's eyes. She says it's incredible what someone can do when they have no way out. The demon laughs, tossing her head back as cracks spread from where she was struck. She admits that in this world, her body is so weak that even a tiny holy sword, no bigger than a needle, managed to kill her. She grabs a man by his tearful face and tells him honestly that she doesn't want to be with him. As she lets go, drops of blood fall to the floor. A little onion gazes upward as Sonia and Edward smile warmly at their son, welcoming him. The boy is lying down and tries to talk, but only strange noises come out. He's confused and trying to understand what's happening to him. The mother gently rocks Luke in her arms. The main character realizes he's now a baby, fully aware that he's been given a new life. He remembers how the girl held his face and told him she was dying and didn't want to leave him. Now, the main character understands that she is really gone. However, he suddenly understands that she had caused his death too. The boy, shaking and crying, clings tightly to his mother's arms. He suddenly thinks about his parents and his sister. In his mind, he quietly says sorry, but he feels relief knowing he kept them safe. Sonia, holding Luca, gently asks why he's crying. Edward stands by his side, watching his son with worry. Sonia asks her son to smile, and Edward makes silly faces and noises to make his son laugh. The boy finally smiles at his parents, realizing how much they love him. Suddenly, a mysterious voice echoes in his mind, mentioning a twisted soul. His eyes slowly turn black. Lucas suddenly starts slapping his mother on the face, making her react and hit back. The father, surprised, asks why Lucas is acting out like this. The boy, with a strange look on his face, remembers the demon's words. He remembers the demon girl's smile and her words. Once Chris wakes up, all the memories will come back. The main character understands that he's under a curse. It's making him want to hurt everyone he cares about. His mother notices something is wrong and gently asks if he's hungry. Edward smiles, snaps his fingers, and tells Luca to watch closely. The boy's eyes return to normal, and he smiles at his father, who just created water out of thin air. He says, "Look, the water is floating. That's really cool magic, Dad." Sanya happily tells her husband that he's okay. The boy starts to wonder if magic really exists in this world. The main character realizes that the demon girl's curse is actually a type of magic. Demons have the power to control people's minds with their magic. Edward suddenly understands he can fight back against her curse. He stands by the demon's head, gripping his sword. He calls out loudly, telling Luke to snap out of it. Luke clutches his head in pain, while his mother and sisters rush over to help him. The demon girl grins, sticks out her tongue, and teasingly asks the boy if he remembers how close they used to be. Everyone surrounds the main character, who's kneeling down with his head in his hands. The dolls are gripping his shoulders, keeping him in place. Edward tells his son to stay strong, while the demon girl laughs cruelly. The girl calls the boy by a name he remembers from another life and tells him she enjoys the taste of his emotions. The main character glares at her, suddenly realizing that meeting her must have put a curse on him. Little Luke lies in his crib with his eyes shut. He's thinking about whether he can break the curse by himself since he's already tried so many things. Determined, he clenches his fists and focuses all his attention on the mana flowing inside him. Suddenly, the boy opens his eyes wide and sees everything below him, as if he's looking down from the sky. He feels weightless, completely connected to the world around him. It's like all the power, energy, and spirits of this place have come together. For a moment, he wonders if it would be better to just vanish, so he could never harm anyone he cares about. He imagines his father bravely fighting wolves in the forest, gripping a bloody sword with scratched-up hands. The main character suddenly understands that this is his own father, but he's confused about what's going on. He sees Edward's face is badly hurt, with injuries even around his eye. Desperate, he yells at everyone to stay away from his family. A dark shadow moves closer to Sonia, who is holding Arcia tightly. Arcia is crying, and Sonia warns the figure not to come any closer. The main character realizes the little girl is his younger sister. Their mother shouts for Edward to help, and both siblings start crying. He understands this is a vision of the future, where everyone he loves will be in danger. He knows he must stay alive to protect them. The boy lies peacefully in his crib, feeling calm as he thinks about the magical mana flowing inside him. His parents are standing beside the child. Edward is calling out the boy's name, and there's another person standing behind them. Edward and Sonia seem nervous. Luca realizes that this is the energy of his mom and dad. he understands they are passing their strength onto him. The father takes the child's hand. The main character feels a strange, uncomfortable energy from the father's magic because of his connection to the world. He realizes the magic keeping the opponent trapped feels a lot like a curse. That energy seeps into his body, trying to overpower the curse within him. The parents are holding their son's hands tightly. To defeat this evil, you must use its own power against it. The curse grows by feeding on his thoughts and feelings. He remembers the demon saying a part of her would always stay with him. That's the last thing he can recall. Edward shuts his eyes. The main character understands that nothing is changing because his father's spell can't overpower the curse. The boy recalls the demon's words. The curse grows stronger by feeding on his thoughts and spirit. The main character realizes what's happening. He chooses to give up his soul, knowing it will vanish. But if he lets go of his memories too, he can make the contract spell much stronger. He still remembers being killed by the demon and her threat that he would destroy everyone he cares about. He can't undo this dark curse, but he can try to weaken it using a contract spell. The contract says he won't have special feelings for anyone except his own family. The boy stands still, showing no emotion, lost in thought. Edward tries to reassure Sonia, who is concerned because their son never smiles. The boy is practicing his magic on a training dummy. He wants to use his powers only to protect his family. Edward tells his son that it's important to always have balance in life. The boy clutches his chest. If the curse takes hold, the contract will start fighting back. He'll end up all by himself, far away from everyone he cares about. The main character closes his eyes as magic swirls around him. The curse and the contract combine, creating something completely new. Luca realizes that someday he will be gone, but he finds comfort knowing his new mom, dad, and future sister will be safe and cared for by someone else like him. Edward stands happily, holding his son in his arms. Sonia smiles warmly beside him, while the cheerful priest smiles in the background. That's how Luke came into the world. His parents are overjoyed and wiping away happy tears. Sonia gently gives the newborn hero a kiss on the cheek. The boy stands bravely in front of the demon's head, while everyone watches him with concern. He announces that he finally remembers everything. It's all because of the demon's curse. The demon's head confirms that he's telling the truth. The demon girl smiles and says she can't remember who she is, but she feels a part of herself inside him, and she calls Luca Sweetru. The demon says she can't handle the main character's strong emotions. Edward quickly grabs his sword, swings it, and shouts angrily, demanding to know if she is hurting his son. Edward swings his sword and throws it straight at the demon's head. The sword hits perfectly and gets stuck right there. The father calls out to his son, shouting his name, but the boy just keeps holding his head. The mother looks at Luke and asks if he's all right. Nearby, one doll lies on the floor, and both girls are close by. The main character starts breathing hard, eyes shut tight. Suddenly, his soul shifts again, and he opens his eyes. They're completely black. The clay dolls trap the boy once more. He tells his family to stay back because he doesn't want to accidentally hurt them. Sonia starts to cry. The father looks at his son, worried and unsure what to do next. Luke's cousin is crying too. Arch, with tears in her eyes and fists clenched, says that her brother is suffering and she doesn't want to hurt him. The main character feels bad for letting Archie down and says sorry in his mind for promising to keep her safe, but only making her cry. He tells her again that everything will be okay. Luca feels so hopeless that he thinks ending his life might be the only way to stop causing pain to his family. He remembers the moment he struck the demon girl and the strength he used to defeat the demon in another world. Now, he plans to forge a holy sword and pour all his magic into it. He holds the sacred sword, which shines brightly. If he drives this sword through himself, he will break the curse and destroy both himself and the boy. The main character fights through the pain, reminding himself that even if he doesn't make it, at least his loved ones will be safe and won't have to suffer. He looks at his worried family and feels deeply grateful for their love. In his heart, he thanks them and reminds himself how much he loves them too. His little sister stands in front of him, her face sad and tears in her eyes, begging her brother not to go through with it. The main character starts to say goodbye, but the girl suddenly yells at him, begging him not to leave. Once again, the main character hears his younger sister's voice in his head, yelling that there's no need for this. Luca gets frustrated because it's just too loud. Luke recalls telling Arca not to wake him up while he was sleeping. Arca looks at her older brother, confused. Then she understands he won't be around anymore, and tears start to roll down her cheeks. Someone announces that Luca is in trouble and heading this way. The high elf tells you to trust him, but says he'll need a bit of your help too. The elf asks the main character to wait. The boy quickly opens his eyes, surprised, and tries to figure out where the mysterious voice is coming from. Suddenly, tree roots burst out of the ground and wrap around the boy, lifting him up slightly. Startled, the main character lets out a scream. Everyone in the family turns to look at him, and the father asks in shock, "Where did these tree roots come from?" Suddenly, a voice calls out from the side, warning Luke that if something happens to him, all the excitement will be over. Luke and his family turn and look in surprise toward where the voice came from. The high elf Aaliyah comes up to them, yawns, and winks with one eye. He says he always thought there was something unusual about the boy, but never suspected it was a demon's curse. As he's lifted off the ground by his roots, the main character tells the elf this is why everything must end. Alia approaches, reaches out her hand, and pleads with Luca to wait because she doesn't want to lose a close friend. He smiles at Luke, points his finger, and tells him the curse can actually be broken. Luke looks at him, shocked and amazed. Mr. Alia tells Luke that, luckily, everything they need to break the curse is ready. Luke's whole family watches closely as the elf begins his work. Alia points to himself and proudly says he's a high elf. The boy's family is with him. Many people notice them and stare at the elf in surprise. The high elf walks up to little Archie, gently takes her hands, and tells her that out of all the people, she is the one who has the ability to make a pact with the world tree. Alia turns to Archie with a warm smile and says she can use her abilities to break the curse on Luke. Archie looks at her with wide eyes, surprised, and asks Alia again if she really has such powers. Edward looks at the high elf and asks what sort of contract with the world tree he means and what it's all about. Alia explains that this child is always climbing the sacred tree. The tree itself is enormous. A young girl holding a stuffed bunny stands quietly. The high elf explains that she unknowingly uses the magic of the tree to keep herself safe. I also want to protect my dear brother. Lucas stands there holding an axe. The main character asks Arca if she can sense his mana thanks to the sacred tree's power. Alia smiles and agrees that it's true. Normally, only the high elves, who are the true protectors of the world tree, have this kind of power. Luke's parents stare at him, surprised. He says it's hard to imagine that a girl with so many opportunities could come from such a distant village. Alia keeps holding Archie's hands and tells her she's now the guardian of the world tree. Archie looks at her in shock and can't believe what she just heard. The high elf remembers the world tree and explains that deep in the enchanted forest, there is a special world tree that hasn't had a guardian for a very long time. With his help, the girl can make a pact with this tree. Edward protests, reminding Mr. Alia that Arsha is just 2 years old. The high elf tells everyone to be quiet, explaining that it's up to Arsha to make her own choice. The girl is unsure what to do. She glances at her brother and sees him trapped by tree roots, clearly suffering. The girl bursts into tears, crying loudly at first, but then she pulls herself together and decides to rescue her brother.